The keys hit the steps loudly, attracting the boy's attention. When he returned, he thought that he no longer needed them, because he would not return home. He climbed onto the roof of the house, holding a cup of coffee in his hands. Cao Xiaomeng leaned against the fence and remembered why he had been ordered home. His best friend fired him from the company they were building together. He thought that all normal people were having dinner with their families now, and he was alone. Xiaomeng only thought that he would not get out of the hole he was in after betraying his friend. He began to climb over the fence, remembering several months in which he lost everyone, did not communicate with anyone, and sat at home. And then he spread his arms to the sides and began to free fall from the roof because it seemed to him the only way out. Xiaomeng smiled as he flew down. Finally, he would be free and his suffering would end. He was confused when he heard the sound of rain. The boy sat down on the stones, wondering if he was dead, because he definitely heard some sound. Placing his hand that was dripping with blood, Meng wondered if he was really such a loser that he couldn't even die after falling from such a height. He looked at his hand in surprise, smelling blood, but it was not his, because he was not injured. A human-like creature reached out to him. In front of him was a zombie that made some sounds and wanted to get to the living cow. Turning around, he started running away from the zombies with screams of fear and panic. As he ran, he tried to figure out what was going on, and all the streets were filled with zombies. Xiaomeng was confused and scared. What happened to the world because he only stayed at home for a month? He watched as the zombies actually started eating one of the humans who was trying to run away from them. Turning around, he decided that he would deal with it later, because he had to run away before the zombies got to him. A little further away was a zombie girl, but she was noticeably different from the others, which is why she caught Cao's attention. She rushed at him with screams, turning into a very scary creature. The boy hid behind the door of some house, leaning on it with his back and thinking that the creature was very fast for a simple zombie. He leaned on the door harder because they began to bang frantically on it, and Xiao realized with fright that he had been opened. He began to run deep into the room, looking around and thinking that this door would definitely not hold that girl back. It turned out that he was really afraid of dying. Zombies burst into the room, emitting shrill screams and immediately noticing their prey. Xiaomeng tried to escape up the stairs, only thinking in fear of why there were so many zombies around. He thought he wanted to die and could do it if he let himself catch up. The boy continued to run up the stairs to the roof, wondering if his body was really disobeying and running away because he himself felt fear. He stopped, looking at the zombies in front of him, and realized at last that what he wished for was not death. Xiaomeng thought back to the events of a moon ago when he couldn't believe it, asking his best friend why he did this since they had been friends for so long. But Guangjun said that it was not surprising, because Xiaomeng could not draw elementary logical conclusions. Pointing his finger at the boy, he angrily said that people who are of no use should be thrown away like garbage. Standing here and now, he understood that he just wanted to get rid of the hole in which he found himself. Fighting off the zombies, Xiao also realized that in this new world he wants to survive more than ever. The boy ran away as fast as he could, because he convinced himself that he would definitely not die here and now, because he changed his mind about wanting to die. Speeding up even more, Xiaomeng thought that if death didn't take him after the jump, then his only option now was to survive, as he wanted to kick Guangjun's ass. That terrible girl appeared in front of him, who screamed in his face and swung at him. He braced himself for the blow, closing his eyes as the zombie girl's hand hit the wall next to his face. Xiao opened his eyes in surprise, not understanding what was happening, because she was supposed to kill him and she definitely wouldn't miss. He stared at the girl as the news flashed that he had activated a post-apocalyptic delivery company and that she was his first available employee for hire. The boy exhaled, his eyes widening in surprise. He could not understand which company and whether this insurance company opposite is really his future employee. Cao raised a finger, thinking that he had no choice in this situation. He was sandwiched between the safety net and the other zombies that were approaching. With a shout, he quickly pressed his finger on the button in front of him, taking the girl to work. The zombie girl screamed. Tears appeared in the corners of her eyes, showing that she was definitely in pain. Now in her place was a beautiful girl with a healthy skin color and human features, although her clothes were a little torn. Xiao said sheepishly that he didn't understand what was going on, but he guessed from looking at the other zombies that her first order of business was to get rid of them all. The girl began to scatter other undead like pebbles without even straining. Gu Xiaoyu also used some ability that killed with a sound wave from a distance without even turning to face the target. She flew towards the others as if flying above the ground and targeted the other company trying to reach her master. The girl quickly dealt with them as well, scattering their remains around while Xiaoyu watched her intently. The boy opened his mouth in surprise, saying under his breath that the girl was very strong. She looked at him with her big, beautiful eyes, and he could only think that in this post-apocalyptic world, this girl is the perfect worker. Scratching the back of his head, Xiao let out a breath, glad to be alive in this situation. He was surprised but happy to catch the rewards, because the task was completed and he was able to get a backpack, some experience, and a lottery ticket. The boy, leaving his clothes for later, couldn't help but be happy for the weapons he got with the backpack. But he began to look thoughtfully at the system before his eyes, because he did not understand what it was and what the system wanted from him. Xiao decided that it didn't matter and happily tapped the lottery button, hoping to win something really useful. In the system, he stretched out his hands because the ball of light that he won was heading towards him. It was Gu Xiaoyu's memories, even if only a fragment. Not understanding what the benefit was, he looked at the object and realized that the memory was modeled like any object in the games he had played before. Ta Xiao still did not understand how to use this fragment, sticking out his finger and touching the face of the object with his index finger. In the next moment, everything around began to be filled with an almost white, bright light, not jokingly confusing the boy. Covering himself with his hand from the blinding flash, he did not understand what was happening and where he was. The guy wondered what kind of place it was, and then a man walked through it, which surprised him even more. How did that happen? Cao watched as the good-looking girl who was now his co-worker returned to her boss who had called her. With his hands folded across his chest, the boy's eyes widened as he realized that these were indeed Gu Xiaoyu's memories, and that it was no wonder that no one could see him and everyone was passing through him. Her boss started saying that all of her results were very good for someone new to the job. However, he recalled the situation in the company and began to talk about the impossibility of financing. That girl said with a smile that she was already grateful for the fact that she works here, because her qualifications are still small and that she will not even fight if her salary is reduced. Putting his hand to his head, the boss told her to take half of the salary, and then, when everything would settle down, he would reimburse everything the company owed her. Xiaoyu did not argue, but only smiled sweetly, saying that she agreed to such conditions. Meanwhile, Xiao watched silently, watching the boss walk away, telling her to get to work then, and quickly. He clearly didn't like it. The girl, when the boss left, put on a bow, fixing it with a pin on her hair and admiring how beautiful it was, because it was bought with her first salary. She thought that she should work even better, because a lot fell on her lot after she ran away from her family. Determined, the girl told herself that one day she would have her own home and her own family, much better than the one in which she grew up. The boy, with his hands on his sides, couldn't help but smile. Gu Xiaoyu was such an optimist even in difficult times for herself. But his smile faded when he saw that everything around him was disappearing. He could not believe that this was all he had won in that lottery, because it was not enough. He looked at the girl who was now standing in front of him and saw a new task: to return to her place of work, return her bow and the remaining wages. This will give loyalty points from her. While the girl just looked at him and didn't say a word, he kept wondering if the loyalty of his employees meant how his workers treated him. Xiao said he should thank her for saving him and he leaves the zombies to her. The girl nodded silently, listening to him. When they changed clothes and appeared near the office where the girl worked before the apocalypse, the boy thought about the fact that he saw her in battle, but still thinks that her power is simply incredible. He watched the fight involving Xiaoyu and said to himself that he was very glad that she was now on his side. Standing next to her desk in the office, Tsai thought that he should quickly look for the bow, because it should be here somewhere while the girl dealt with the zombies. After searching the table, he shouted with satisfaction when he did find that bow. It was lying on the shelf in the table. He gave a gleeful squeal as he turned to the girl and said he had found her pin. The boy screamed, scared that the girl wanted to kill him when some zombie flew past him. But then he saw that the girl was simply so engrossed in the fight that she did not notice anything around her while she was dragging 2 zombies behind her. He looked at Xiaoyu, watching him intently. A drop of sweat ran down his face, and the boy himself could not understand why she was looking at him like that. And then her eyes lit up, and a reminder appeared above her that her loyalty is low, and because of this, she may not understand that he is her ally and not an enemy. Xiao shouted, panicking, finally understanding how loyalty really works. He screamed for her not to come near him. He ran to the door, trying to reach for the handle, and lamented who came up with this stupid loyalty system. Running out into the corridor, Xiao tried to close the door that the girl had crashed into and shouted that this was the second time they were playing cat and mouse. Thinking that the system was unlikely to help him this time, he had to barricade the door so that Xiao Yu couldn't get to him. Pushing on the door from this side, the boy thought how quickly they would finish this point with the bow, because that door will not last long. Cao thought that although he had dealt with the bow, there was still a salary left, and he had no idea where to look for money. He saw a zombie sitting in front of a pile of money, holding 1 wad in his hand. Xiao Meng thought that the old man had scared him. He sat and did not even pay attention to the fact that the boy was in the room. He smiled, because the crisis in the company that Xiao Yu had been talking about even before the apocalypse was a simple lie, and all the money was with her boss. Watching the zombie boss count the money, he remembered the image of his friend, because they were very similar. Even after turning into a zombie, all he could do was count money. Xiao approached the table and, holding out his hand, said that he would just take the $200 he owed the girl and leave. The boy was surprised because the zombie grabbed his hand. He shouted that he did not want to give the money that much. The girl's boss growled at the boy, reaching for him with his hands to snatch him from a pile of money. Cao took out his sword, swung it while the old man held his hand, and said he would test his new sword on him. The zombie screamed as the boy cut off his hand, which was pouring out pitch-black blood. Xiao Meng promised that the next swing of his sword would finally send the ex-leader of the girl to the grave, from which he would not rise again. The boy swung his sword again at the cry of the old man, who rolled his eyes at him and was getting closer. He couldn't believe that the sword had slipped out of his hand, spinning through the air and reaching the ceiling. The next moment, the sword fell nearby, and the zombie, leaning on one arm, pressed on the boy, who was now lying on the floor, and rested his hands on the old man's shoulders. While he was fighting the old man, Xiao Meng thought about how to stay alive, and what exactly he could do to distract him from himself. The guy reached for the money because it was, in his opinion, the only way to distract this boar from him. Xiao threw the money he had reached into the air, telling the zombie to pay attention to the money he so adored. The old man, shouting and roaring, did pay attention to the money and straightened up, completely absorbed in the money flying around. Drooling, he began running around the room, trying to catch every dollar that was still in the air. Anger rose in him again when he went at the leader with a sword. Xiao thought that companies built by such people could only profit from employees, and he remembered his friend again. Xiao Meng, holding the sword with both hands, brought it above him to finally kill this zombie with one precise and powerful blow. Putting his own fury into the blow, he lowered the blade of his sword until he fell to his knees from the force he applied. As he folded his sword while the remnants of black zombie blood flew around, Meng thought that the company he would create would have nothing to do with such corporations. Looking back at the remains of the zombies, he said that he would always treat his employees like family and would never deprive them. After tying a bow in Gu Xiaoyu's hair, the boy told her not to get angry because the ribbon was torn, and he patched it up as best he could. When it was over, he happily said that everything was ready and removed his hands from the girl, looking at her renewed appearance. She, turning her face to the wind, smiled almost imperceptibly, not looking at the boy standing next to her. Looking at the girl, he could not believe what he saw. Did she really smile? Out of surprise, the guy even rolled his eyes at her. Scratching the back of his head, he thought that he must have succeeded. At that time, the girl looked in front of her with incomprehension. As they walked, Xiao Meng told her not to worry and that he would definitely find a way to retrieve all of her memories, but he didn't know what would happen when he did. The boy, fighting zombies with Xiao Yu, thought that he was able to recruit zombies and could complete tasks to increase his level and loyalty. He told himself that he had not felt so cheerful in a long time. He thought that he felt himself as if he realized anew himself and the meaning of his life. Cao looked at the system message that said he could win 100 points, and the lottery if he collected 50 units of water and food, because without resources there is no way in this world. While the girl ran to him, the boy thought that she looked and behaved a little differently than usual. And while the guy with the flashlight went shopping and said it was too dark here, Xiao Yu fought off other zombies who tried to eat his brain. The girl effortlessly scattered the colds one by one without even choking. But watching her, Xiao Meng realized that her skills had changed and diminished a bit. She wasn't fighting like the first day they met. The boy happily looked at the cans that had fallen from the shelf when one of the zombies crashed into them after hitting the girl. The girl turned at his voice. She had tears in her eyes, and she herself looked very upset. Asking as he went what had happened, Xiao quickly ran to her, scared to death. But he stopped when his leg was grabbed by a zombie who had been hit by a girl. He was surprised because he had not yet died from her blow. Grabbing the girl's hand, he ran away, asking the system as he went what happened and why the girl looked so unhappy. Xiao read in confusion that the girl had entered starvation mode, so her strength had diminished and she was suffering. He screamed when he realized that she was actually hungry, and his first question was whether he should feed her human flesh. And while he fought back, he exchanged his points for food for employees. The girl ran after him, and the food, meanwhile, should be ready in half an hour, but it was too long. They stopped when other zombies began to surround them. Xiao Meng cursed under his breath because the situation was almost hopeless. Cao suddenly realized that he would definitely not want to die here surrounded by the undead in this shop. But he was surprised to hear a scream, which made his eyes widen, not believing his ears. The stranger, looking out of the door, raised her hand and shouted for them to run to her as quickly as possible. Xiao Meng began swinging his sword with renewed vigor, clenching his teeth and speaking viciously to the zombies so they wouldn't get confused under his feet. He was still dragging Xiao Yu along. With silent fury, he cut down everyone who came within his reach, because he was in a hurry, because his coworker was hungry. Finally, finding himself behind the door from which that girl was peeking out, the boy breathlessly leaned on his knee and thanked him, because if it weren't for her, he would have been in trouble. The boy calmly squinted his eyes at the blade of the knife, which was immediately at his neck. The girl told him not to be in a hurry to say thank you. She remembered the food he had packed in the hall. There were others in front of him. They demanded that Xiao Meng give up all the food, pointing several knives at him from all sides. The girl said they meant no harm, but for his sake it would be better to just give the supplies away. Deciding not to interfere in Xiao Yu's contagion fight, he smiled awkwardly and said that he would give everything now. Xiao Meng watched as the people around began to scoop up the pea soup from the can, not even sharing with each other and trying to chow down as much as possible. The stranger said with a smile that they were starving and a little out of their minds. That's why they pounced on him and demanded the food he had collected. She said that they weren't usually like that and that the zombies just changed everyone. And Cao said that now everyone is who they really are and don't pretend. The boy thought that these people were starving in their shelter, but they did not have the courage to go to the store for supplies and must be very scared. A rough man with torn pants told the boy to bring more next time, and Xiao asked if he should also bring a lip curler. The woman began to shout that they needed more and that this foray would not cost him anything, and did he really want them dead? Cao smiled, saying that there are many of them and they are afraid to go against the zombies, but they attacked him without fear. A man appeared behind him, called the boy a sucker, and told him in a commanding tone to bring groceries. The girl began to defend Xiao, telling everyone to stay away from him and that he had just brought supplies and needed to rest. The old man turned to her, poking his finger, and told her to shut her mouth and that she didn't understand anything. Gu Xiaoyu stood and silently watched the people around her arguing about the food. Xiao Meng screamed, telling them to loosen the ropes that bound him just a little bit before they searched and took everything in the world. In order to somehow get out of the situation, the boy shouted that he had another lunch hidden in his pants. All four menacingly leaned over Cao, asking why he had been silent before, while the boy himself felt sweat running down his face. The company began arguing over who would get it, then watched as the can of soup flew up, thrown away by Xiao himself. The men looked around, seeing where the cans had rolled, and widened their eyes from the desire to get to them as quickly as possible. The fat man ran first, followed by a woman who tried to overtake him. Both wanted to be first. But another man, thin and wearing glasses, was the first and said, laughing, that those pigs behind would not get anything and that it was his legitimate prey. Picking up the canned soup, he was drooling, dreaming about how he would eat it. Having reached the corner where the canned goods and the man were, they both looked around in surprise, asking where he had gone. The girl ran after them, shouting for them to stop behaving like animals, and immediately, she watched as the man fled in fear, while the woman, falling to the floor, crawled back. At the same time, Xiao Meng was thinking how tightly they tied him, that he couldn't get free while they were fighting over the canned soup. The boy screamed as he watched the girl and the man run towards him. It wasn't planned. They shouldn't have come back so quickly. The girl began to untie him, saying that they had to run as fast as possible. When he asked what was happening there, the girl screamed in horror that her aunt had been eaten. Cao hugged and covered the girl as the wall exploded behind them, telling her to be careful. Xiao Yu stood and looked at what was peeking out from behind the wall, a huge monster with many eyes and sharp teeth. The hand of the woman it devoured peeked out of the monster's mouth and tentacles developed around it. A boy who was another survivor from that company ran from the monster and screamed for help. Xiao and the girl were gaping at the monster, while the fat man was already running to the door behind which the zombie had become. Cao shouted for the fool not to open the door, his eyes widening in fear. The old man looked back at the boy's cry, opening the door, and the zombie on the other side was already trying to get inside. When the zombies fell into the shelter, he told himself under his breath that the octopus would wait a bit, and he had another task. He felt like he was between a rock and a hard place. Hiding behind Xiao Yu, the girl shouted to help the boy and save them all. Xiao Meng, fighting off the zombies, fearfully called Gu Xiao Yu to help him, because without her, they would all die. Widening his eyes in surprise, the boy looked at the message about the activation of joint work, because the situation was critical for the owner's life. The girl started to just stand and felt the activation of the joint work mode. The boy smiled slyly because he knew that with Xiao Yu they would win without much effort. However, he was surprised to see how his body began to change. The scars that were on the body of his co-worker appeared. He swung his sword using his skills and Xiao Yu's strength, knocking the zombies away. He swung his sword, slicing through the back of whoever was attacking the girl from the shelter as she screamed in terror. Scattering all the zombies with a few swings of his sword, Xiao Meng thought that he had become as strong as his co-worker. While Xiao Yu was eating her food that he had ordered for her half an hour ago, the boy was glad to see her back, telling the girl that when she was around, he felt more at ease. Looking at the monster with tentacles, he said that the two of them should make it, if only somehow. They began to fight the zombie monster, confidently attacking together. The boy told Xiao Yu to continue in the same spirit, and while Xiao Meng began to swing his sword, the girl put all her strength into the blow of her fist. The fight was watched by 2 survivors, and the girl said that these 2 were really very strong and they were lucky to be on the same side. The girl said that she and the child had no chance of survival and asked if he could take them with him. However, she opened her mouth in surprise when he refused. Holding the bag, he said it contained enough food and water to last them for a while, and he added that he helped for helping him enough. Ta Xiao was determined because he did not like those who pointed a knife at him at least once. Remembering that he had a lottery ticket, he activated the system to use it. He asked himself in surprise if this was really happening. Holding a baguette and soy milk in his hands, Xiao thought that he couldn't get enough of it and that his lottery ticket had been wasted. Xiao Yu stared at the glass of milk without even blinking. He put his food aside so that it would not reach the girl, and she even bent over from the smell. Very quickly she rolled a baguette and washed it down with soy milk, being happy and blushing at how delicious it turned out to be. And while she was eating, the boy was happy. She had a skill slot open because he gave the girl her favorite food, and the clarity of her mind increased. Having understood how it works, the boy with a smile told her to say if she wanted something to eat, and he would definitely get it for her. Now he was thinking about which skill branch to upgrade, and there were 3 of them in total: Cruel War God, Immortal War God, and Thunder Rage War God. He happily said that it was time to test all the skills, because it could be done before choosing a branch. The 2 of them stood at the docks, while Chao explained that he had found this place a few days ago on a sortie, and that there was plenty of space and just the right amount of zombies. Sitting behind one of the containers, so that the zombies would not get to him, the boy readily said that it was time to check and activated the first skill in the system. Xiao Yu resolutely entered the battle, testing the first skill available. She clenched her hand into a fist and pulled out the other and gathered strength. The girl threw lightning, and her attack did not leave anyone in a fairly large radius around. Satisfied with the previous skill, Xiao Meng activated a friend, the immortal god of war. The zombies now looked only at the girl, and their eyes glowed just like hers. The boy watched as Xiao Yu attacked with a fist, her wounds on her body beginning to heal under the greenish light of the power. Cao activated co-op mode, wondering if she could raise the dead with such skills. And now, holding a ball of red power in his hands, the boy activated the third skill, the cruel god of war. Xiao Yu began to change again in the light of the new power. She stared at one point in front of her as her body filled with the skills of a harsh god. While she attacked all the zombies around her, releasing her power, the boy read that Berserker mode can be activated, and then, after this attack, a weakness appears. Xiao Meng opened his mouth, screaming at the power the girl was using now. Something exploded in front of him. When the skill ended, Gu Xiaoyu stood in the middle of the docks, looking weak. But in front of them, staring at her, appeared a stranger from the zombie family. She had used her power before, scattering everyone around. Seeing the girl who could be a mutant, Xiao Yu, with Chao's warning shout, kept her course to attack her. Putting a lot of her strength into the kick, the girl came into contact with the block of the attack. The stranger with horns easily blocked the attack by putting out her hand. The boy screamed, not believing his eyes. Someone was able to block the attack of the immortal god of war. Xiao Yu fought the girl without showing any emotion as she fiercely attacked. Xiao Meng was trying to figure out what to do, because Berserker mode would soon end, and the girl would be unable to face the horned blonde. He ran in the direction of the fight, activating a sync mode with Xiao Yu as he went. He shouted, drawing the subordinates' attention and saying that it was time for them to run. As the blonde attacked them with fury, the girl dropped everything and immediately walked towards Xiao, who was waiting for her. Seeing someone among the containers, the boy charged, drawing his sword. The stranger covered himself with his hands, began to scream out of fear, and even cried a little. Instead of attacking, Xiao Meng quickly grabbed the boy's backpack and dragged him behind him while he screamed not to be touched. Meanwhile, the horned girl was getting closer and closer, raising her hand to attack. The stranger opened his mouth when he saw that mutant. He couldn't believe his eyes. As he walked, Cao shouted for the boy not to get nervous. A zombie, even a mutant, is still a zombie, and they can handle even that. Turning the corner, he shouted in annoyance. There was a dead end due to a pile of garbage. The mutant overtook them and screamed in Xiao Yu's face while she calmly looked at her and did not react. Looking at all this, Xiao Meng wondered what to do, because the girl would not defeat the mutant on her own. He quickly ordered the stranger to give him the backpack, smelling the smell of gasoline. The boy swung his backpack with all his might and ordered Xiao Yu to return as soon as possible. As soon as the backpack was in the air, the mutant attacked it. The blonde looked in surprise at how the rain from the gasoline fell and settled on her. And after that, throwing away the lighter, he clenched his teeth angrily and waited for it to fly. The mutant, engulfed in flames, screamed shrilly. Xiao Meng, putting his hands on the boy's shoulders, told him not to stand as a pillar and to run away as fast as possible. While the boy was saying that they had succeeded, Cao said with relaxed hands behind his head that it was all possible thanks to the fuel in the chubby man's backpack, and thanked him. Xiao did not pay attention to what the boy said and read the information in front of him, because there the missions were updated. He asked the stranger, who thought Sister Men would kill him if he wanted to hire him. On one of the floors of a high-rise building, 2 people were looking through binoculars, examining everything around them. And while the stranger watched, Xiao Meng dealt with the zombies, swinging his sword. They ran after each other, and Xiao let out a gleeful squeal, pleased that they had succeeded. The boy wondered that special rewards are given only for completing the main campaign, but the tasks give experience points, which are very useful. When they stopped, everyone pointed sticks and firearms at them, asking who they were. But the chubby man said that everything was fine, and that it was him, Da Zhou. One of them, taking the stick more firmly, asked if the boy was with him, pointing to Xiao. He explained that these 2 saved his life, and even though there was no fuel, he led them to the leader. As they walked down the corridors towards their boss, Xiao Meng muttered to himself that he would never have thought that he would find such a clean place in the apocalypse world. And the boy explained that they occupied a hospital that had not yet been put into operation. And while Zhou was stressing in the back, Xiao was saying that he thought humanity would descend into chaos, but here everything is more or less organized and civilized. The boy shouted that Chow had come and brought someone with him when he was told that the upper floors were closed because there was a training session. The girl loudly told everyone to get together, go out and kill all the zombies. The girl began to say that the zombies would never give anyone a second chance, and called to remember all their features in order to win. One of the guys yelled that zombies were afraid of light. Either bright daylight or an artificial flash would slow them down nicely. Another shouted that zombies are sensitive to any sound. Turning around and swinging the bat, the girl called the third, telling them to kill them, and quickly. The boys began to fall silent with fear, but said that they were obeying her commands. They entered the roof where the escort said he had returned to dojo while the others stood behind him. The girl turned her head, asking if he had brought fuel. The boss asked how he dared to return when he replied that he had not brought any. After all, the lamps will not be lit and the recruits will not be able to train at night. She finally turned to face them, saying that she had given the boy a chance 3 times, and what was the result? He never lived up to expectations. The girl poked the boy with a stick, saying that he was a scumbag of society and not worthy of trust. She ordered that the boy did not dare to appear in the camp again. Turning now to Xiao Yu and Xiao Meng, she said that the camp did not need newcomers who came from the fringes of society. Qiao exhaled and told her to calm down and not rush the horses. Standing with Xiao Yu, he said that they are here with a business proposal. The boss of the camp laughed sharply after these words, not believing what she heard. She said that they have a home here. Water, food, medicine, soldiers, and medical equipment. And there are only 2 of them, and Xiao has the sense to talk about business when there are far fewer of them. Zombies suddenly appeared here and started running in the direction of people hungry and angry. The boys started running and shouting that the zombies had broken free and the sun was already setting. One of them screamed and called the boss for help. With a snap of his finger, Xiao Meng called out to Xiao Yu, motioning for the girl to deal with the zombies while she calmly stood by. Joe and the guide couldn't believe what they were seeing, and the latter asked what the girl was up to. With a satisfied smile, Chow said he could get them fuel and more. And while the girl dealt with the horde of zombies, he said that the price was just to let Joe and the 2 of them stay in the camp. He continued with a smile that in this world where even the best friend could betray him, he would be a most valuable and loyal ally as long as it was profitable. Xiao Yu, Xiao Meng, and the boy went to a department store full of zombies, and the boy mumbled to himself that he didn't understand why they were going there. A little earlier, the boss introduced a guy who just needed guides in that department store. The boss said that he needs to go to the playground of the supermarket. Hitting the monster with a hammer that tried to attack him, the boy said that he was not going there for fun, but to find his father. Cao thought that the little one had been training very well at the base, but said aloud that he was afraid that it would be impossible to find his father alive if he was inside the department store. The little one said that he knew it himself and added that he was going there to make sure that he had not turned into a zombie. But if he had, turning around, the boy seriously replied with zombie blood on his face that he would kill his father if he turned into a zombie. The boy remembered how he asked his father why he likes to entertain people, and he answered that everyone has their own problems and he just likes to make people smile. The boy, resolutely looking at the department store, remembered his father's words that a smile really is magic. As they walked with flashlights, the boy said that his father would never forgive himself for turning into a cannibal monster, so he had to make sure and deal with it himself. Xiao Meng looked around and muttered to himself that it was very strange that everyone was on the 3rd floor when there was only 1 zombie on it. And while they looked around, Cao said he wanted to be sure they weren't ambushed. Something incomprehensible appeared in front of them, which was several zombies at the same time, and they were ruled by another monster. The other zombies mindlessly followed this monster, their eyes glowing red. Xiao gritted his teeth at the situation. That was why no one was hiding on this floor. Xiao Yu heard the master's call and was ready to start a fight to save them all. Leaving the flashlight on the floor, Xiao Meng took out his sword and prepared to fend off the zombie attack. Meanwhile, the girl calmly and unhurriedly began the fight, using her powers and scattering the zombies one by one. She swung and kicked the monster, driving that zombie car with her leg. Covered in dust from the impact, the boy shouted, calling out to Xiao Yu and worrying if she was okay. Xiao Meng turned to the boy and told him to find a safe place and hide until they dealt with the zombies. But the boy spoke out, poking his finger in front of him, but didn't say a word, didn't even move. There was a man in a bear costume, to whom the little one was pointing. This was his father, whom he was looking for. The boy opened his mouth at the sight of his father, not believing his eyes. Now the father's suit looked different, covered in blood, mud, and with a torn sleeve. Xiao Meng began to shout to get the boy's attention, which would first lead him away and hide him, and only then would he fight everyone. But Wang Rui, standing with his back to Chao, flatly refused. He told the boy to go help Xiao Yu, and he would deal with his father himself as he had planned. Turning away again, he told Xiao not to forget what his order was, and to trust that he would be able to handle it himself. As Xiao Meng climbed higher to get a better view of what was going on around him, he thought that he would never have guessed that Wang Rui was such a cool guy. Meanwhile, Xiao Yu was dealing with another zombie attacking her. There were too many of them. They pulled her by the hair, tearing her almost to pieces. When the girl was almost trampled by the zombies, she used an upward kick that Xiao had ordered him to do. The girl was breathing heavily because her strength was decreasing. Standing on top, Xiao Meng asked the girl if her powers disappeared when the boss was not around. Jumping back, the boy took out his sword and told the girl to go deal with the fat man while he fought the lower-ranking zombie. The guy opened the system menu and activated the cruel God of War mode and synchronization with it. Clenching her teeth, Xiao Yu went into the very hell of the battle in the red light of her power. Van Rui, meanwhile, told himself to remain calm as he was in camp training for this day. He shined a flashlight in front of him, reminding him of the goal of the training. If his father survived, bring him to the camp. If not, kill him himself. The boy, gathering his spirit, took the hammer more firmly and went straight to the zombie in the bear suit. But almost immediately he dropped the flashlight and fell to the floor as one of the zombies grabbed his ankle. The bear kept coming closer, making growling sounds and reaching out. After killing the zombie that was holding his leg, the boy shouted, letting Xiao Meng know that the bear had spotted him. Cao wondered why mutants always happened to them, but Xiao Yu wasn't going to go into berserker mode, so the auto-zombie should not be as scary as that blonde. The boy couldn't believe it, screaming from the fact that a very fast zombie was almost flying at him. The mutant screeched like all the zombies he was riding as he changed course to Xiao. Cao thought he knew how to win because this machine cannot exist without a driver. He yelled at the girl to aim for the head because that was a vulnerable spot for any zombie, putting all her strength into that blow. The girl stuck out her leg and aimed at the head of the driver of the zombie car. The main zombie began to explode, and along with it, those he controlled. The boy couldn't help but be happy. He started to smile while looking at it and said that it looked a lot like fireworks. At the same time, Wang Rui screamed so that the other zombies wouldn't disturb him while he fought them off. The bear removed its head, revealing its zombie-turned father, which began to attack it. Sobbing, the little boy called out to his father. But the zombie hovering over him changed his serious look to his smile, albeit barely noticeable. The little boy looked at it in surprise, remembering an incident from the past. Then he and his dad were standing on the bridge, and the little one asked what they would do if the world had an apocalypse, like in the movies. And Dad said that people would lack optimism and joy. With tears in his eyes and a cry of despair, he swung the hammer to end his father's suffering. And then he hit with all his might, turning him into a mush. Xiao Meng carried Xiao Yu on his back while she rested after the battle and said that his father's answer was interesting, and the little one, putting his hands behind his head, said with satisfaction that it was indeed true. As they walked, the boy asked if he could become a warrior like Xiao Meng, and he said that it was most likely impossible. The boy said that thanks to his father, Wang Rui would become a much better warrior. A few days later, Xiao Meng was playing cards in the camp, laughing that he had won again. After that sortie, he began to take orders in the camp to help with everything that was needed. He wasn't worried about the rewards because he was getting experience points, but now he was staring in confusion at the toy that some kid had recently given him. His eyes widened when Wang Rui's toy gave him 20 experience points, and now the system emitted a bright light, taking the toy away. Now he looked at the toy in his collection and understood that the experience brings what is important to the customer, but he gives as a fee for assistance. Xiao Meng held out his hand with a satisfied expression, telling the guy he was playing with to admit defeat and hand over the cigarettes he had with him. The guy decided to smoke one last time, and Cao shouted that it was a scam and tried to take the cigarettes. Everyone started laughing at the boy when he coughed, because he didn't know how to smoke at all. Cao even burst into tears of laughter and asked why the boy was trying to be cool. Another guy said with a smile that it reminded him of his wife because he liked the way she smelled, and when he remembers her, he lights a cigarette. They were all sitting together, and the boy was asking the other why he ordered a doll if he was almost 30, defending himself from laughing about cigarettes. Blushing, Dashan said that he ordered the doll for his daughter. And then he said that his wife and daughter were somewhere in the city, but he had been communicating with them since the beginning of the apocalypse. But they are strong nuts for him, and they are not so easy to break. Dashan began to push Xiao Meng to say that the other boy had ordered, laughing at the boy's romanticism. But Xiao Wu, who made the order, began to brush off the question. The boy was told to tell Xiao Meng what Wu was ordering, offering his own watch or a packet of cookies in return for the information. Spreading his hands to the sides, the boy said apologetically that this was a customer's secret. Xiao Wu showed his middle finger and shouted that he just ordered a bouquet of flowers. They began to laugh, and Dashan even said that now he understood what the flowers in the trash can were. While the boy was telling who he gave them to, all three boys started holding their bellies. Xiao Meng looked around, having stopped laughing because there was a loud sound outside. The guys also got serious, saying that it's thunder and it's 100%. Cao even spat out the water he had been drinking before. He saw in front of him something he did not want, smacking under his nose. The boss appeared in front of them, shouting for everyone to quickly follow her. Xiao Meng held his face and shouted, asking what was going on because he didn't understand anything. She began issuing orders, telling Xiao Wu to take everyone who couldn't fight to the 3rd floor, while Dashan held the defenses here while she herself built the line further up. Xiao Meng didn't understand as he shouted again why everyone was preparing for something. Tying her hair before the fight, the boss said that a horde of zombies was coming. Xiao Yu stood in silence, while the boy asked if this meant they wanted to be hired to protect the camp. The girl rolled her eyes and then said that of course, but she would not be able to pay much. Xiao Meng assured that he would not profit at such a moment, but he only thought that the system would still issue a reward for this task. But when Cao saw that it was a task of difficulty S, he grabbed his head, not believing that he had agreed to such a thing, and that it would surely end both him and Xiao Yu. The boy, smoking his wife's cigarettes, said he hoped nothing would happen this time, and Xiao Meng asked what happened last time. He said that their former boss died a month ago on a rainy day. He said she died at the pier where they met Da Zhou. After finishing his cigarette, he squinted at the boy and said that it was then that their current head, Meng Di, killed her. He mentioned that it was their first foray because they received an SOS signal, but they didn't know how ordinary raindrops would affect zombies. He said that Megdi and their former leader had argued. Then it was the same, and Megdi said that they had gone for nothing. One of the boys in front shouted that there were zombies on the way, drawing attention to himself and to the crowd of the living dead. The ex-leader started shooting, telling everyone to leave and she would deal with them herself. One of the zombies behind her attacked the girl, knocking her down on the asphalt and trying to get to her, but she immediately broke free, wrapping her torso around the zombie's neck. Turning around, the girl kicked the goiter in the face. Throwing the zombies away, the girl, although there was blood on her face, said with a smile that the way was now clear. Meng Di turned around and shouted to Yanzi. She was warning her because there was something on the containers above. The girl ran into a mutant whose attack was predicted by Meng Di and who was now in front of the leader, having jumped from the container. Meng ordered Li to lead out the survivors, but she herself was going to help the leader, who was screaming for her to flee with the others. Li said that he then got into the car, obeying the order, and drove to the place where the people they were supposed to rescue were waiting. Dee also ran to the car with a bat in her hands, which was being chased by one of the zombies. As the zombies pounded the car trying to get to the people inside, Meng Di shouted for Li to get out of here as quickly as possible without waiting for Yanzi. When he asked again without even moving, the girl said that she had killed her with her own hands. The boy could not believe what he heard, looking at one point in front of him, and froze. Standing now in the camp, he said that then Meng Di told that Yanzi wanted to use the girl as bait in the battle against the zombies, but she died herself. Li said that he didn't tell anyone anything at the time, even though there were questions about Meng, but now he was asking if he did the right thing then, because she was a good leader after Yanzi. Xiao Meng said that the boy did the right thing, because it is much better to have a leader who helps to survive than to know the truth that will not make anyone better off. The guy just grunted, saying the word survive, as if that wasn't what was happening here at all. Chow returned, distracted from the conversation. It had begun. On the defensive line of one of the entrances to the camp, Meng-di was giving out orders, saying that no one should relax, that they had barricaded the door because zombies would definitely climb through the windows. She yelled for everyone to install the bars on the windows as soon as possible and not to spare the fuel, because it is their safety. One of the guys yelled that they were really starting to get inside when he saw the outline of a zombie in a flash of lightning. The other guy, gritting his teeth, told him to put up the bars faster, and he would cover and distract the monster. Keeping her defenses, Xiao Yu concentrated on kicking the zombies that were climbing into the windows. Li said that the girl was very cool and asked where Xiao Meng found her. The guy made an excuse that she was not his girlfriend and that she used to do boxing. Li followed another boy who said his help was needed in another wing of the camp, telling Chao about it. Ta Mengdi shouted for Li to stay here and called Xiao Wu with her. The girl said that Li was staying with the elder while they defended the perimeter from the other end. Xiao and Li began to fend off the onslaught of zombies, slashing them left and right. Meng-di ordered Da Shan to go help in the other wing while she and Xiao Wu sorted things out here, even though there was a carnage here. Remembering another part of the plan, the boss waved his sword and told the other group to turn on all the lights they had. Hugging the canister, the boy shouted that they would not have any fuel left for later. But Meng said that she didn't care, because if they didn't survive now, there wouldn't be any later either. Boss wielded a club, while Da Shan chose an axe and Xiao Wu was quite skilled with a spear. But a mutant appeared on the defense line, letting out a scream. He was in some spikes and with huge claws instead of fingers. Xiao Meng squinted at what appeared in the corridor, sitting on the window frame. He didn't believe zombies had spikes. Xiao Yu quickly intercepted the zombie's strike, stopping it less than a meter away from Chao. At the same time, on the third floor, another mutant crippled Xiao Wu's stomach, which covered Meng-di with himself so that she wouldn't get hurt. Grandma Chen asked that the whole herd of survivors had forgotten on this floor, looking directly at the boy. He cleared his throat, saying they were just lost, and apologized to Grandma. Others asked if they had really lost the third floor and shouted that they did not want to die, and how they could survive until dawn. Meng-di told Li to show generosity to the zombie-bitten campers. Da Shan's sister approached her brother and said that she would bandage his wounds. On her knees, Xiao Yue began to treat and bandage the wounds while the boy sat and suffered. Bowing her head, she said that she realized that Xiao Wu had died when her brother embarrassingly called the boy's name. The girl was visibly upset. Da Shan apologized to his sister for not being able to protect Xiao Wu. She remembered how Wu had grabbed the flowers to give her yesterday, and confessed his feelings for her in front of many campers. The boy listened as the sister continued, which Xiao refused due to nerves, but then came to her senses and tried to find him, but could not. The girl clutched her head, and tears continued to flow from her eyes. She finally admitted, albeit late, that she really loved him very much. Li told Meng-di to count and said that there were 9 fighters and 4 logisticians left, and she replied that it was not that many. Wang Rui screamed and tried to get away because Xiao Wu had been killed and he was going to go down and avenge him. The boy cried and screamed, was it really better to hide and wait for death? Xiao Meng folded his arms across his chest and thought that it would be easy for him and the girl to get out of here. But what about the others? He wondered if they would wait for the zombie mutants to appear and their own death. While there was time and opportunity, Xiao Yu ate to gain strength for another fight and choked so much that the boy asked her to eat slowly. Looking at the system, Chao wondered what to do. Whether to delve into her memories again by opening the lottery ticket. But something like soy milk might fall out there again. Finding a new recruit nearby, Xiao Meng told the camp boss that he would leave the girl with them and return soon if he survived. Meng-di reminded the boy that they had made a contract with each other and he agreed to carry out her errand. But he said with a smile that he remembers everything because they are business people. Meng, seeing zombies breaking through the barricades at the door, yelled for everyone to get ready. The spiked mutant flew straight at Xiao Yu behind her, extending his arm to get to her faster. Swinging, the girl cut the zombie in half with her blow in one motion, splattering blood everywhere. Xiao Meng asked the girl if they could help in the camp while he was gone for a while, because if she refused, the camp would not last until morning. He continued while the girl drank her favorite water, saying that there was a chance with her in the camp and that he would not be giving her orders for today, and that she could judge the situation for herself. Xiao Yu was ready to fight the zombies, getting into a battle stance as she finished her meal and replenished her energy. Kao in the docks looked out from the container, looking like he would be his next employee. He was able to move quickly between the containers, looking around and noticing that due to the high tide, there were far fewer zombies in the harbor. And while he went straight to the new worker, he became serious and thought about how to tame him. He picked the items in the system that he would need, remembering that just like with Xiao Yu, he would have to rely on the system and hints. After preparing the ultraviolet lantern, he thought that he could use the sword after it as he continued to run. Xiao Yu thought that he was thinking too much about the people in the camp, because his main task now is to survive himself. While the zombie was behind him, the boy kept thinking that he would get into an ambiguous situation if he happened upon the mutant that Lee had talked about in the camp. In the light of the lightning, he turned back, feeling a gaze on him, and saw what was on the container in front of him. But the very next moment, Xiao Meng fought off the attack of a zombie that was nearby in a second. The boy clenched his teeth from strain, wondering why things always don't go according to plan. Xiao screamed as he was thrown back by the force of the zombie's blow and his sword was broken. But she was interrupted by a white-haired girl. It was she who repelled the mutant's attack, throwing him face down into the asphalt. The boy rolled his eyes, looking at the one who saved him. As the girl attacked that zombie again, he saw in front of him the one he had heard so much about and seen in the system while looking for workers. It was Yan Zi. Someone else watched what was happening and could not believe that zombies do not act in the same way, but fight with each other. Meanwhile, Xiao Meng told himself that Yan Zi still had some hatred for the mutant zombies and was glad that he was saved. The mutant caught the girl, firmly holding her leg and pressing her face down into the asphalt more and more. The zombie, holding Yan Zi tightly and baring her neck for himself, ran his long tongue over the skin, leaving a network of veins that became more and more visible. And then he bit his fangs into her neck, starting to drink her blood. The boy looked at it, wondering if he was absorbing her to heal himself. Gritting his teeth, Xiao Meng wondered what he should do, because if he left, the camp would be over, and if he stayed. Deciding that he didn't have time for a plan and had to adapt, he called out to the monster, drawing attention to himself and shining a UV flashlight on it. However, the zombie, although it screamed from the lantern, rushed at the boy, showing no signs of injury. And the very next moment, the mutant was crippled by a spear, pinning him to the ground. It was Enzi who was unsteady on her feet, but she was holding a few more iron clubs tightly, ready to throw them to protect Xiao. In the few seconds that the girl threw the sticks, the mutant was completely crippled by them, from legs to chest, and was now screaming in pain and the inability to escape. Eventually, the mutant exploded, splattering blood all around. Wondering if the zombie had exploded due to being a mutant, Kao now looked at Yan Zi, who was now in the dead zombie's place. He decided that it was time to move on to the second part of the plan, but he had no green idea how to conquer this girl. Da Zhou and Wang Rui fought off the zombies, but they still couldn't aim with small arms because the monsters were too fast. And Xiao Yu at the same time crushed the zombies one by one using precise single strikes. One of the mutants flew at her, speeding up to quickly reach the prey, which stood with its back to him. Instead of hitting the girl, the mutant zombie hit the wall with all his might, leaving a hole in it. Gu Xiaoyu managed to jump back up, turning around and now heading towards the monster, gathering her strength to attack. She hit the target exactly, causing a loud sound that spread through the building in a wave, while smoke rose from the force of the impact. Li shouted that Xiao Meng didn't just keep the girl away from the others for the entire fight, while Wang Rui and Zhou stared at her in fascination and didn't think to back down. Da Zhou shouted to Li that the zombie that Xiao Yu had hit stood up, poking at him with his finger. The guy was visibly scared. Da Shan told the monster to be left to him and swung his weapon at it. Dodging the attack, the zombie went for one of its own, bringing out a hand with huge claws and letting out a battle cry. Clenching the axe with both hands, the boy gritted his teeth and delivered another blow. He made the zombie turn away and scream in pain. Li and Meng Di were shooting back at the crowd that was closing in on them, while zombies were also approaching from behind. Yelling that he could not die here because his daughter and wife were still waiting for him somewhere out there, Da Shan put all his strength into the blows of the axe. In the light of one of the lanterns appeared a woman holding the hand of a little girl with tied pigtails. They were both zombies. Having said this, the boy could not believe what he saw in front of him. He stopped his attack, not paying attention to anything except the woman and the child. Throwing the axe down, he crouched down, asking if it was really his daughter and his wife Ying-hun, as if the zombies could answer. The woman let out a shrill cry, opening her mouth and showing her sharp teeth. Dashan was so shocked by their appearance that he imagined living people in front of him and smiled as they came for him. Stretching out his hands, the boy said that he missed him very much and asked his family to come and hug him. The girl aimed for his hand with her mouth open, while the woman braced herself to bite his neck as they both moved closer. He said they would all go home. Lee screamed like crazy, trying to get Dashan's attention and bring him back to reality. On the mountain of stones, as if on her own throne, Xiao Yu sat with her hands folded on both sides of her and resting. She was waiting for a new wave. Sitting up straighter, she leaned forward a bit, noticing the new crowd bearing down on her and seeing their weak spots. The girl understood that there were too many of them, and that it would be difficult while she looked at the new wave, where everyone was, ducks, children, and women. Lee shouted that he would help her, but asked the girl to move away from the zombies, pointing a gun at the crowd. At the same time, Xiao Wu appeared, turning into a zombie, and let out a shrill cry. He rushed into the attack. Xiao Yue screamed as she turned to the boy she loved and begged him not to do what he aimed at. Wu screamed at the bloodlust and killing that flowed inside him as he charged. Shouting a battle cry in response, Xiao Yu rushed forward, unable to see anything anymore and determined to act. She fell down in the middle of the corridor, but made every effort to get up, although she hit her shoulder. The girl clenched her teeth, leaning on her hands and getting up. Xiao Yu remembered Xiao Meng's words that he believed in her and wanted to justify them, no matter what it cost her. Gathering the remnants of her strength into a fist, the girl yelled back as the zombies in front of her began to scream, seeing her. The girl was stopped from continuing her attack by someone's hand. It was Xiao Meng, who told her to rest well, because she had already spent a lot of energy defending the camp. Embracing the girl with one arm, he told her to leave everything else to them. Standing next to the boy was Yan Zi in her zombie form. Xiao Yue whimpered, crawling on her buttocks as Xiao Wu approached, tongue sticking out as he was already thinking about how delicious his prey would be. She begged him not to, as if she could get through. Using a powerful lantern along with his power, he attacked Wu, telling him to rest in peace. On the other side, Dashan, who had turned into a zombie, attacked Li. He restrained him by holding his wrists, but he did not understand where this old man had such strength. But the very next moment, Li opened his mouth in surprise. Dashan's head almost exploded. Such was the force of someone's blow. It was Yan Zi's precise shot that hit the target straight. The boy could not believe his eyes. He began to fall silent when he saw who had saved him. He couldn't believe it was her. Xiao Meng asked Li to look after Xiao Yu, handing the exhausted girl into his hands, and told him to rely on him and reinforcements for the rest. Holding the girl that Cao had entrusted to him in his arms, the boy thought that this was a reinforcement, because that fair-haired girl. Meng Di interrupted his stream of questions, which he was muttering under his breath, saying that he seemed to have noticed the same thing as her. They stood like that, watching the battle, while the boss said that despite some changes, there definitely couldn't be a mistake, and it was Yan Zi. Meanwhile, the girl began to attack the crowd of zombies, targeting one of those who was closer. She recalled how a guy appeared in front of her at the docks, arms outstretched and saying that the camp she had previously been head of could fold without her help. He thought at the time that there was no other way out, so he told Yan Zi that he could kill Meng Di for her, if only she would help the other part of the camp that was useless in their struggle for power. The girl then stood looking boredly at the boy in front of her but did not say a word. Z took another iron, going straight at the boy who thought he was going to die right there. She threw her stick, aiming directly in front of her and instantly watching where her projectile flew. Sitting on the asphalt, Xiao Meng turned his head in surprise to see a zombie with a limp stick head lying right next to him. As she got closer, the system sent a message that her temporary employment contract had gone into effect, and he breathed a sigh of relief as she promised to help. The guy was disappointed because the employment contract did not give any advantages. It was not possible to choose skills and develop them, and it could be terminated by the worker at any minute. He didn't understand why he should ask the employee to come back if anything, Standing back and watching the zombies die one by one, Xiao Meng clenched his hand into a fist and encouraged her to keep up the good work. She glared at him while the boy gritted his teeth and read the system message that Yanzi didn't like such encouragement. They were looking at the crowd that was right at them, and the boy asked with a slight smile if she would show all her skills. She charged with a dagger, and the system began to change it as she activated her weapon master skills. Xiao Meng shouted, asking how she could use that little dagger, and the girl only had one. It was, in his opinion, impossible. Yanzi swung, slicing a multitude of zombies in two with that single small dagger. She looked at the boy, and he read the message that the girl turns everything in her hands into a weapon, can sacrifice durability for the sake of attack range. A month ago, Meng Di and Yanzi were running between the containers, and the former shouted joyfully for the leader to follow her, and it seems that the zombies were finished and they could return to the camp. After stopping, the boss raised her hand and pointed to the wounds left by the zombies on her forearm, saying that it seems that she will not be able to turn back. The girl grabbed the boss by the shoulders, telling her to wait and just need to find an axe and chop off the hand because they still have time and the infection has not yet spread throughout the body. Meng Di bowed and listened as the boss fought the virus for too long. Yanzi told her not to tell anyone that the boss was infected by zombies, because the others would lose hope of survival. Although she had heard that she would be able to become the leader after Yanzi's death, she sobbed, asking how so. Embracing the girl, Yanzi held her close and told her to live for those in the camp who needed her help. Sniffing, Meng was now looking at the zombie she had finished off with the bat and wondering how he could possibly bring her to tears. The white-haired girl threw everything at hand at the zombies, both stones and screwdrivers which she found somewhere on the floor in this bedlam. Xiao couldn't believe, wide-eyed, that she had taken out several zombies with a single screwdriver, throwing her, and from such a distance. Next, she chose the tennis ball, changing it again with the help of skills, and sending it to the head of another batch of monsters. Finally, he understood what they had to do. Xiao Meng pointed at the zombie with the mouthpiece that seemed to be in charge of it all and told Yanzi that he was the one they should kill first. Returning, she looked at the boy with sadness, and the system told that the girl believed that it was impossible to get through this crowd. But then Meng Di told them to leave the killing of that zombie to them, while Wang Ruqi was swinging his hammer merrily behind. The boy came up with a plan, saying that they needed to distract some of the zombies and that Yanzi was their leader, while the others dealt with the lower-ranking monsters. Cao took out a symbol monkey from his backpack and raised it above his head. He said that he had wanted to try her for a long time. The zombies began to walk at the sound of the monkey in Xiao Meng's arms as he called out to them, telling them to come to him. As Xiao Yu rested against the wall with her eyes closed, Li said he wanted to help as well, while somewhere in the periphery, Zhou was yelling for him to get the ammo. Picking up her dagger again, Yanzi charged forward, splattering various colored blood everywhere. The girl went on the attack, swinging her weapon and drawing the attention of the other zombies to her while she minus the others. She smashed the mouthpiece into which the leader of this brood of zombies was snarling. Xiao Meng shouted meanwhile that they were in trouble and that the last weapon had failed. Yanzi now picked up an ordinary leather belt, changing it with her power and turning it into a new weapon. One of the zombies, meanwhile, has gone pantless, showing everyone his skull underwear left over from his past human life. It was clear that the monster boss was furious. He shouted, rushing at the girl. But Yanzi quickly got her bearings, wrapping the belt around the zombie's neck and pulling it harder and harder. Another mutant exploded, causing the girl to close her eyes. 2 weeks have passed since that day, and they all felt better. Li took his time digging the ground for another grave. He and Van Roy were looking at another mound with a cross they had made. They buried people not in the cemetery, but just like that. Less than half of them survived then. Handing another order, a bottle of alcohol, to the boy from the camp, Xiao Meng thought that there were a lot of orders due to the move. There was an interrogation in which Meng Di confessed what had really happened the day Yanzi disappeared, and Li was finally freed from the heavy burden of silence. Xiao Yu eventually woke up after several days in a coma because she had spent almost all of her strength and her body needed to recover. Now she was stretching, standing in the middle of the room. After they defeated the onslaught of zombies, Yanzi silently left, and was no longer seen by Xiao Meng, like anyone else in the camp. Meng Di told everyone to pack up quickly because they had to leave soon for a new location to choose for their camp after the critical damage to this building. From the construction of the sentence, Li understood that the girl was not coming with them, so he asked her about it in fear, even extending his hand to her. Returning to him, Meng answered seriously that she wanted to wait for Yanzi. The boy began to question whether she was joking, because they did not know where the ex-leader was now and how long it would take for her to return to this camp. Folding her hands over her chest, she said that she had already decided everything and that this conversation was pointless, but Li stood his ground and tried to convince the leader to go with them. From the roof of a building nearby, Yanzi watched this scene, listening to everything the boy and girl were talking about. To her utter surprise, Xiao Meng was also there, leaning on the roof exit and asking if she was going to make her presence known and meet up with her friends. She turned to the boy in surprise, and he said that their temporary contract was still valid so he could find her, but he did not come to wait for her. As he approached, he said that Li endured everything for the sake of the camp, because he also suspected Meng Di, and she, in turn, took on a huge responsibility, although it was very difficult for her. He told Yanzi to go to them and at least say a proper goodbye instead of just disappearing like before. The girl thought about his words, thinking about whether it was really necessary to do so and whether it would be true. And Cao continued saying that this thoughtfulness was useless because she had already turned into a zombie anyway. Placing his hand on her shoulder, the boy told her not to worry and that he would be there to support her. Li kept shouting that the leader can't stay here alone, as she imagines it at all. And Meng Di shouted back that she was no longer the leader in that case. Turning her back on him, she said that enough persuasion and chatter was enough and ordered to go to a new place. Li even poked his finger with emotion, saying that then they would die together because he was also staying here and waiting. Standing calmly by the side, Xiao Meng folded his hands and said that it was enough to shout. And then he said with a smile that he had brought Yanzi, who was really standing next to him. Turning and walking to the car, Li said that it was great and that now that she was here, they could finally go. But he was interrupted by Xiao Meng, folding his arms over his chest, apologizing and saying that the girl had actually come to say goodbye. Everyone turned to him, not believing their ears and looking at the boy in surprise. The girl looked away as he began to say that Yanzi was no longer human, and her horns were direct proof of that, and he was the only one who could communicate with her. Li glanced over at the others, thinking they were all scared, as the campers started questioning, stuttering, which meant she wasn't human. Meng Di lowered her head and asked if that was why she wanted to leave without saying goodbye. And then she told how she lived this month and that she endured all the burden in the united camp. Yanzi listened to Meng admit that every day she thinks about what Z would do if she were alive, and every time she thinks that she will fail. Di asked if she really thought she would leave her because she was no longer human. After all, they are comrades who fought side by side. Lowering her head, she began to cry, saying that if it wasn't for Xiao Meng's intervention, the girl wouldn't have even given her a chance to say goodbye again. Yanzi stepped closer, placing her hand on Meng Di's head, who was hunched over under the weight of her emotions. Sobbing, the leader rushed to hug the mutant, because she was overwhelmed with emotions. Xiao Meng told Li with a smile that he would rely on him, and Meng Di, and asked him to take care of Yanzi. Already standing next to the bus on which they will go to a new place, Meng handed the girl the most expensive thing, which she bought before the apocalypse and which is very dear to her. Wang Rui asked Xiao Meng that if he and Xiao Yu were gone, they would not be able to handle the horde of zombies, and the boy replied that they would just have to try hard and everything would work out. Hitting his chest with his fist, Cao told the little one not to forget his father's words in any case. The three of them stood and looked at the trail of the bus, which was leaving the parking lot, and said goodbye to the campers. When they left, Zhao turned to Yanzi and asked what she was going to do now. After informing the system that she had entered into a long-term contract with him, even though she thought he was a coward, the girl returned to the boy with a smile. This time, when choosing what to spend his points on, he readily chose 10 lottery tickets. While the boy poked into the system, activating 10 lottery runs, both girls stared at this child in the body of a grown man with stone faces. He was given night vision contact lenses that allowed him to see well in the dark. After that, a dark red candao, in which strength and power are pumped. Holding the new weapon in his hands, he couldn't help but rejoice because two blue objects fell out at once. And it will be possible not to carry the sword with you, but to summon it at any moment when the system updates the arsenal. With a wave of his hand, he started the lottery further, waiting to see what would happen. And then it started to fall out. Sparkling water, bath foam, 10 units of salt shakers, and ingredients for cooking. Yan Zi and Xiao Yu, sipping their drink, couldn't understand the reason for the boy's madness while he shouted at himself because he had forgotten the law of meanness and spent all his points. He also received a small bottle of regeneration that would help heal the staff if needed, and a prophylactic agent that would allow you not to get infected for 12 hours after the injection if bitten by a zombie, but the effect does not work after the bite. And Gu Xiaoyu's memories glowed golden, one piece at a time. He also received a universal fragment of memories, also one piece that glowed dark blue and purple. The guy started bowing to the ground to the system, saying that it is very generous and he is grateful. The girls looked at this, and both thought that he was speaking disrespectfully, although Xiao Yu is very kind, so she wouldn't say it as bluntly as Yan Zi thought. Taking the universal fragment, he thought that even though Xiao Yu could become stronger, he wanted to know about Yan Zi's past. Having exchanged the fragment for her memory, he began to joyfully tell the girl to show her boss what she used to live, while the girl looked at him like he was crazy. He found himself in the middle of the desert, as it seemed to him, and there was a real variety around, although they were not zombies but ordinary people. A bald man with a cigarette said that such rubbish was not worth bullets and that the rest would be dealt with by fire. He saw the girl crawl away while everything behind her was exploding and burning in flames. Standing near the memorial to the dead, the officer said that he could not have thought that out of all the living, even the elite squad of clearing terrorists, only one little girl would remain alive. He said that the most ironic thing about it was that the girl was easy to control with drugs. 66 out of 67 people died, and it was the end of Snow Crow. Kneeling in front of the memorial, he said that his application had been accepted and that the snowy owl would be bequeathed as a kind of condolence. As he walked away, he told Yan Zi there was little he could do as she stood there staring at the graves in front of her. Without turning to face her, the man said that the organization was giving her a leave of absence and that she could return when she was ready. The commander did turn around and was quite surprised, squinting at the girl who said she wanted him to keep the snow crow. She stood blindfolded, saying that the crow cannot be inherited because it belongs to everyone. In the office, Yang Zi walked past a wall that had the names and photos of everyone in the squad. She was now the only one in. The girl unhurriedly ate alone in the dining room, which until recently was full of people. And at some point, she packed her things and left the Snow Crow dormitory. Entering the empty office of her commander, she saluted, although no one was sitting in the chair, and reported back. Holding her hand in a fist near her heart, Yan Zi cried, saying that the Snow Crow had accomplished its mission. Xiao Meng watched all this, folding his arms over his chest and not commenting on anything he saw and heard from Ji's past. Cao was given a mission. The girl's loyalty would increase if he took her to the orphan commander in her hometown. The boy could not believe that everything was so simple. After looking at the commander's address, the boy joyfully shouted that it was decided and they were going there. But after some time, he was not so happy. The system gave approximate coordinates, and the boy did not understand how they could find the commander if they did not know exactly where he was. Xiao let out a frustrated sigh and visibly lost his spirit, saying that they would get to the commander tomorrow as the sun was already setting. While he was thinking about finding a place to spend the night, there was a loud noise that drew Xiao and Zi's attention. The man and his brothers ran from the zombies and shouted for them to run away as quickly as possible. Cao, without wasting a second, ordered the girls to stop the zombies, while he himself was going to help the survivors. The girls landed on top of the zombies, stomping them into the ground. After that, both of them, moving almost identically, went on the attack, seeing in front of them only targets that had to be destroyed. Those who survived watched the girls fight in the dust. One asked who they were, and the other said that it didn't matter because they were very strong. Turning around, the other started yelling for his brother to pay attention to the zombies running at them from behind. But he didn't get far. Xiao Meng landed on the zombie, killing him and splattering his remains around him, when he drove his sword right between the shoulder blades into the heart. Extending his hand, Xiao Meng asked with a smile if none of the boys were injured, and if they could move around on their own. Stuttering, one of the boys answered that everything is fine. Slinging his sword over his shoulder, Chao said that they would have had a hard time if he hadn't happened upon the company. The bespectacled boy, still looking scared, asked if the boy could lead them. Looking around, he was a little surprised, but still agreed to help. While they were going forward, it was getting dark. Xiao Yu stood on the car assessing the situation, and Xiao asked what kind of werewolves they were, because it was a task of the system and quite complicated. When no one answered what kind of zombies they were, and whether they were mutants, Chao enthusiastically said that he would like to see those werewolves. They looked around as men heard that he could take any supplies from their camp while he protected them. Folding his hands with a respectful expression, Xiao Meng agreed, much to the bespectacled boy's delight, saying that the contract was valid. When he reached the building where this company's camp was, Xiao saw a real werewolf. He looked like a wolf, but bigger and with eyes that glowed with red light. He immediately ordered Yan Zi to grab the werewolf, to which the girl reacted immediately. She rushed to attack. Meng ran after the girl, ordering Xiao Yu to protect the people while he helped Zi. Xiao watched in surprise as the three boys took out some of their weapons and aimed at the werewolf. Yan Zi stood right in front of the werewolf, drawing his attention to her. At the same time, the guy in glasses ordered to shoot the wolf. Xiao Meng shouted, telling them to stop because his maid was there. But they did not listen and fired, and Yan Zi heard her boss order her to dodge the bullets. Bullets began to hit their target, the stomach of the werewolf. Xiao Meng grabbed the boy by the shoulders and asked if he wanted to kill his men, since they were fighting in close combat. The boy did let the survivor go, gritting his teeth and telling them to find a place to hide. The sound of the shot definitely attracted the attention of many zombies, and the boys could not cope with them alone. Turning his head to the boy, he said that he had principles and, if they had already agreed, then the agreements should be fulfilled. Turning around, he ordered Xiao Yu to start chasing. The werewolf ran, trying to get away from the girls who were chasing him. In order to detain Zi, the werewolf tore off the doors of the cars and threw them at the girl who was running after him. She caught the door on the fly, turning around by inertia only to throw it back. The wolf was thrown back by the force of the girl's blow, which she invested in throwing the door. Having turned around in flight, the werewolf began to break with the help of its claws, which dug into the asphalt. Yan Zi looked at the building the wolf had started to climb up and saw sparks flying from its claws as it touched the brick and concrete. Running after the girl, Xiao Meng shouted that the wolf was most likely wounded and would be hiding in the building. The three of them stood in front of the door in the building, and Xiao Meng said that even he could smell this beast because it was too obvious. Hearing the team break down the door, Xiao Yu didn't hesitate and swung. There was a woman standing in the room who was as scared as a little boy. They both looked at the uninvited guests. Cao did not understand what was happening, and the system meanwhile announced that they had arrived at the location of Commander Chen's house. Looking at the photo, he asked if he really understood correctly the girl who said that the werewolf saved her, and she said that she would not have survived in that park without him. She said that the camp that Xiao knew about was created by bandits, and that she and her son, while foraging with others, got into it. They killed old men and left the women to have fun with them. She said that they managed to escape, but when the bandits were chasing them, a werewolf appeared. Looking at the photo, he saw the rescue dog that Commander Chen once took in. And it turns out that he, becoming a zombie, retained the skills acquired during life. Meanwhile, Yan Zi entered a room where a huge dog was sitting alone. Entering the room, Xiao told the girl that the dog appeared because he wanted to help and thought that they were in trouble and couldn't do it on their own. The dog sat looking at the old clothes and toy on the floor as Xiao talked about him, saying that all he could do was watch people become zombies and be killed, even though he himself was badly injured. Xiao said the dog continued to help people by relying on himself, his skills, and others. The girl's eyes widened when she heard the child's cry, which made her stop her sentence in the middle. Looking out into the corridor, Xiao Meng asked what had happened. The bespectacled man was holding the girl by the hair, pointing a gun at her and saying that Boss Xiao is also here and it's a surprise. The bandit said that this girl belonged to him. Bespectacled pulled the girl by the hair while his brother smiled, saying that he always got his back, and she was his property. Xiao Meng interrupted this tirade, calmly telling him to let the girl go, and quickly. While the girl was sitting on the floor, the bandits pointed a gun at the boy, telling him not to interfere because, most likely, he guessed everything after her story. Eyeglasses said he might even let Cao have fun with her if he didn't get in the way. Because although he has beautiful girls, men sometimes need to change their tastes. He exhaled, telling himself that this is what the apocalypse really looks like. Dogs become like people, and people become dogs. The commander's dog was standing at the door, wanting to intervene, but Yanzi held out her hand, stopping him. Adjusting his glasses, the bandit said that it was a pity that the boy's answer was just like that, and he still wanted to pardon him. And then he pointed his hand at Xiao Meng and ordered his men to attack. They did not delay and ran at the boy to take his head off and grab his girls. Cao was calm and stood still, only calling out to Xiao Yu and Yanzi and thus urging them to attack back. The boy was not like himself when he looked directly at the bandits with a cold look and ordered the girls to kill them. The girls began to scream, changing their faces almost beyond recognition. Bandits held their heads, trying to cover their ears so as not to hear the scream of the zombies. They couldn't believe that Cao had actually raised zombies and bent them to his will. The bandits began to run, stumbling and trying to outrun each other. The wolf wanted to run after to help the girls, but he looked surprised at the boy, who put a hand on his chest, stopping him. Cao looked pleased as he turned his head to the dog and told him to wait and not interfere, as rescue dogs are not supposed to harm others. One of the bandits bumped into Yanzi, who appeared in front of him as if out of nowhere. He fell to the floor and looked at the girl in fear. Then turning around, he ran in the other direction, screaming in fear and calling for help. Xiao Yu appeared in front of him, moving closer from another part of the corridor. She waited for him to reach her. The girls standing on both sides twisted him at the same time, tearing off his head. In another part of the corridor, one of the bandits saw a silhouette and decided to take refuge in another place. Standing outside the door of one of the rooms, he held the door shut and said that Vaughn must have wanted him dead because he didn't even give him a gun when they came here. He covered his mouth with his hands so as not to make a sound when he heard a knock at the door. The boy knew that he would make a lot of noise if he closed the door. He rolled his eyes as he realized that he had emptied himself of fear as he relaxed a bit as the footsteps outside the door had quieted down. He screamed in terror as Xiao Yu's fist smashed through the wall right next to him. In front of him stood a zombie girl who even seemed to be smiling. The leader of the bandits pointed a gun at Cao, recalling his own words that he works honestly, and asked how he could attempt on the life of his employer. Dodging around to avoid being hit by bullets, the boy seriously said that bandits cannot be called people, so he will not do business with them. Throwing away the empty pistol, the gang leader ran down the corridor trying to escape from Xiao Meng. As Cao ran, he heard Wang say that they provide shelter and food, and the girls themselves give their bodies in return as a sign of gratitude, and it is not a crime. The bandit hid behind the open door of the room he ran into and prepared a knife, waiting for the boy to appear. And then, at the right moment, Vaughn brought the knife above him, swinging and giving a battle cry. Xiao turned sharply when he heard the sound and saw a knife hovering over him. The boy grabbed the bandit's forearm, preventing him from reaching his body with the knife. Wang, meanwhile, said that Cao would die first. Using one of the techniques of self-defense, the boy quickly left the bandit without a weapon. The knife now fell to the floor under Van's clenched teeth. A few seconds later, he was lying on the floor after hitting the sofa, which was a little further away. Bending after his blow, Xiao said that he had not wanted to kill the boy before. As Vaughn got up, the boy continued on his knees and said he just wanted to kill all the bastards in his camp. Holding onto the sofa and trying to get up off the floor, he laughed. Although the boy had 2 zombies, there were many heavy weapons in the camp. Taking out his sword, Xiao Meng said that it didn't matter, as no one would be able to escape his wrath anyway. To somehow distract the boy, Wang shouted with all his might, challenging Cao to a one-on-one duel, and then screamed, willing Xiao to die as he lunged at him. Having caught the bandit, the boy used a lot of strength to stop him with his hand on his face. Driving his hand into the bandit's face, Xiao Meng pinned him to the floor, pinning him on his back and leaving the blade of the sword right next to his face. He excused himself that during the end of the world everyone builds their own laws. However, Xiao Meng said that bullying people was all his laws. Looking down at Van, the boy said he didn't think justice mattered and said his laws didn't match the laws of this gang. Swinging his sword at the bandit, he said it was the end. Leaving the room where he had finished punishing Vaughn, the boy said that it was now time to proceed with the plan. In the insane asylum, a boy hung upside down screamed loudly. He begged to be released while all the surrounding zombies tried to get to him. On the roof of a building, a thug stood next to a bound and prone girl and taunted her, asking if she was worried about her boyfriend down there while she was having fun with the thug. The girl cried, asking to let them go, and assured them that they would not run away again. The thug taunted her, saying she had no right to argue with him because she was only alive to please him. The next moment, the bandit screamed in pain, falling to the floor and holding on to the severed hand. On the roof were two girls and a huge wolf with glowing red eyes, and Cow saying that he was now their master, and that he didn't even think what a piece of shit this bandit was. Lao Hei was lying on a chest of rocks, having fallen from the roof right in front of the other gang members of this camp. The boys looked at the fact that his arm was torn off and began to ask each other who did it. One of them pointed a finger at the roof. Xiao Meng stood there alone with a sword in his hands, saying that the one who would send them all to another world had done this to the bandit. Cao told them to scream his name, and then maybe he would have mercy on them. Xiao Yu and Yan Zi rushed to attack, although they had stood quietly and did not attract attention. Each of the girls took their side. Xiao Yu pushed one of the thugs against the wall, using a bit of force to do so and picking up the smoker after the body hit the building. At the same time, another camper jumped down from above, swinging his weapon at Yan Zi, who stood watching his attack, waiting for the right moment. After waiting for a good moment, the girl pushed the bandit against the wall with a kick, raising dust like her colleague before. Currently, the two campers who wanted to attack them and Xiao were sticking out of the wall with their backs facing outwards. In the cell, the girl watched what kind of fight was happening outside, notifying about it those who remained with her in prison. The door of the cell suddenly opened, almost flying off its hinges, and they all looked in horror at those who were supposed to appear at the door. There stood a huge wolf that had cut down the guard and was now staring into their faces. The freckled girl looked around, saying that this was exactly the monster Xiao Shui had told them about. At the same time, outside, one of the boys, hiding so as not to be noticed, told their leader that they could not win, because those three, as he thought, were practicing kung fu. But the leader, clenching his teeth and holding a gun at the ready, said that the boy was wrong, because they were grown zombies. The leader decided to act. He ordered to follow him, saying that any zombies are afraid of guns. Swinging, and before breaking the bottle, Yan Zi threw it at the man who was running at her with a knife. It hit him right in the head, destroying it in one blow. One of the campers opened fire with a machine gun, gritting his teeth with hatred and a desire to finish off those who invaded them. The girls ran in different directions, and just in time, the machine gun shells hit the boy who was next to them, tearing him to pieces. The armored car spun in place while the boy fired bursts from the machine gun, trying to injure the girls. Cao now understood what weapon Wang was talking about when he was dying. While they were hiding behind the wall, he ordered those they had taken out of the cell to stay here and not come out until he told them to. He turned to the wolf and told him with a smile that he trusted him, using his name Tank for the first time. At the wheel of the car was the leader of the camp, who shouted encouragingly to his subordinate to continue in the same spirit, and that they would not allow anyone to enter the camp. While a wolf was flying at them from above, the boy began to fire a machine gun at it, shouting so that the dog would not think that he was immortal. The tank closed itself from the bullets, trying to group itself so as not to damage the important organs, while it flew lower and lower and was closer and closer to the bandits. A few minutes ago, Xiao Meng had given him some kind of vial of medicine and explained that it would help the wounds to heal much faster. Now that he was not so vulnerable, the wolf ran around the armored car, distracting the campers' attention. Cao shouted as he addressed Xiao Yu and Yan Zi and said that this was their perfect chance. As Zi took her place on one of the fallen walls and Xiao Yu flew down from the roof, he reminded them that they only had one shot at success. The girl flew closer and closer, concentrating on her attack and dodging the bullets. On the other hand, the guy who tried to kill Xiao Yu was attacked by Zi. In a second, the girl hit her in the head with a blow, destroying the Makitra. Xiao Meng, meanwhile, opened the door of the armored car to reach the leader of the group. He was sweating with fear, begging to let him go and let him go. He said that he would give anything, if necessary, just to save his own skin. Xiao asked unenthusiastically if he was really that afraid, even though he knew the answer. Cao turned and left. He said that the leader should remember this feeling of fear and remember it every time he tries to instill something like that. The leader began to thank that he was not killed. The boy turned his head so that they could see his face and told him to go straight to hell. Swinging with all his might, Xiao Meng was too close, looking into the thug's eyes in his last moments of life. Now that they had cleared out the bandit camp and bolted the door to Commander Chen's apartment, Xiao Meng said that they could now leave. Tank was now hugging the girls, while the boy thought about directing those they had saved to the north, where they could meet up with Meng Di, and the wolf decided to stay with them. Gazing at the beautiful sunny day, Cao smiled as the task was accomplished. He told himself under his breath that he had never met a hybrid like Tank. He wondered if the Disease Prevention Center was working, and if scientists were doing any research. However, the center was in another city, and it was necessary to cross the river. He told himself that he wouldn't think about how the zombies appeared, because he wouldn't understand anything anyway, while Z looked at him with a stone face, finding his conversations with herself strange, even though she was used to it. And Xiao Yu, she rolled her eyes, mentally agreeing with her. Cao was satisfied. The mission was accomplished, and the loyalty of his employees reached 60%. I kept thinking what would happen if it reached 100%. The boy looked in disbelief when the system sent a notification that the points calculation was complete, and he had 413 points on his balance. And he was even more surprised by the news that he allegedly terminated the contract on his own, and the system took 10 times the number of points from him as a punishment. He cried out in frustration because the system said that he should pay off the lack of points, because every day 5% of the amount will be deducted. Xiao was sobbing in frustration at the thought of having to provide for the 2 female workers who were now very worried about his emotional state. Still sobbing, he decided that he would choose a fragment of Gu Xiaoyu's memories and continue with the missions. Looking at the girl and activating the memory, the boy let go a little, and he readily said that he wanted to look at her second memory. Squinting, he lamented that every time a memory started, he was blinded by a bright light, so he had to find glasses. Xiao Tian, his subordinate's brother, was a child, and it was his birthday. Parents pat him on the head, congratulating the boy on the holiday. Xiao Meng looked around, not understanding why Xiao Yu was not present at the celebration. Her mother came back grumbling and asking Xiao Yu why she didn't bring the food. The girl was frightened, immediately answered that she was already carrying and apologized for being late with the dishes. The boy shouted, complaining to his dad that his sister bought a Coke with a blue label, and he wanted a red one. Dad, clicking on the phone, asked if there was any difference, when the boy clenched his fists in anger at this. While the girl was carrying the food, the boy was rehearsing hysterically and waving his arms. He kept shouting that he wanted a red Coke. The girl closed her eyes when her brother poured a Coke on her, stopping at the kitchen door. Xiao Yu was standing all wet, with the sweet drink running down her face from her hair. The mother ordered the girl to clean up and bring the cola he wanted to her brother, rudely asking why she was standing like a pillar. The woman continued, asking if she was upset, and then she added that it was Xiao Yu's own fault because she bought the wrong drink that her brother wanted. After getting dressed, she said emotionlessly that she knew it was her fault, and then she went out the door. After some time, she came out of the 24-hour store and carried the necessary cola in her hands in the snow. The girl sat down by the bench, lighting a match and lamenting that she was in pain because she was burned. She put a candle in the cake she bought at the store and quietly wished herself a happy birthday under her breath. With tears in her eyes, the girl made a wish. She wanted to save enough money, enter the university, and when she left her parents, she would have her own home. Xiao Meng watched all this, folding his arms over his chest and not even commenting on anything under his breath as he did in the past memory. Xiao Yu stood and looked at the boy in surprise as he placed his hand on her head. He said that he wanted to buy a cake anyway, but he is sure that his workers should eat goodies not only on birthdays. With a smile, he said that even in the conditions of the apocalypse, he will arrange the best holiday for girls. The boy laughingly rolled Xiao Yu into the cart while she widened her eyes in surprise and held onto the cart. Now she was chomping down on delicious chocolate chip cookies, holding the whole pack in front of her. Then she played a game of picking up a doll's axe and measuring her strength. Xiao Yu knocked out the maximum. After that, she shot the gun in the shooting range, knocking out one toy after another. Holding the cotton candy, she was pleased with the feast Cao had given her. Xiaomeng and Yanzi gave the girl 10 points when she dressed up in the best dress they found at the mall. Xiao donned a chicken costume for laughs, laughing heartily as he revealed himself to the girls. Surprised, Xiao Yu dropped the scoreboard, and Zi simply threw away the board with her usual stony face. They all climbed into the photo booth to take memorable photos while it was working. Xiao Yu was munching on a cookie while Chao was scrunching his face in amusement. She looked at the photo from the photo booth and couldn't believe that this holiday was just for her, because she had never been given one. She was interrupted by Xiao Meng, who shouted, asking why she was standing because they had already waited for her and called with him. The boy told Zi not to touch the cakes in the pastry shop they came to because they are only here to make the cake themselves. He smiled contentedly, thinking that when the cake was ready, Xiao Yu's loyalty would greatly increase. Reading the recipe, Zhao asked Ji to serve him the eggs, concentrating on making the cake delicious. The girl started throwing food and the boy shouted, asking what she was doing because they should be mixed in a bowl, not thrown against the wall. He saw that the girl's loyalty had diminished and her patience had almost disappeared. Putting his hand to his forehead, he told her to rest. When he was sweating profusely and unable to do everything according to the recipe, Xiao wondered how he had come up with the idea that he could bake a cake, thinking that he can spend the points on the lottery and maybe the cake will fall out. However, now he remembered Xiao Yu's appearance when she was sitting alone in front of the bench and blowing out that candle and bread. After stretching, he thought that he should try again. After 7 unsuccessful attempts, Cao was now smiling with satisfaction because he finally succeeded. Turning on the generator, which would allow him to bake a cake, but turned around in fright. Is the stereo working in the pastry shop? Hearing the loud sounds, the zombies immediately headed towards the pastry shop. Xiao put his hands to his face, screaming in terror. He quickly pulled the plug out of the socket, alerting the girls that a zombie invasion was coming. He stopped Xiao Yu, who was already running towards him, saying that today they would fight without her. The girl braked in surprise. Preparing his sword that materialized from the system, he told the girl to rely on them with Yan Zi. Turning to the zombies who were already running towards him, the boy said that on his birthday, his employees would have the day off. While Zi was running to him, he was giving commands. He said to close the door, and she would finish off all the zombies inside. Closing the door right in the faces of the zombies, he quickly turned around, thinking that he had caused trouble with that cake. He saw Yanzi lure one of the monsters with a pastry bag containing cake cream. Xiao Meng shouted, drawing her attention as it was for the future cake. She wanted to take another bag, but he screamed even louder so that she wouldn't touch it too. She looked at him, and the system notified the boy that it had blocked the worker's intention to attack the leader. After that, he asked her not to be angry because he had been preparing the cream for a very long time. Without reacting to his words, Yanzi nevertheless took another object, plates, and began to throw them into the crowd of zombies. And while she dealt with the monsters, Xiao Meng thought that the cake lacked a festive look. When everything was settled, the boy told Zi to take Xiao Yu upstairs and he would come a little later. The boy said with a smile that the girl, when she reached the roof, should close her eyes and not open them until he asked. When the girls went to the roof, and he prepared everything he thought of. Holding the cake in one hand, he thought about the first time he had cooperated with Yanzi in system mode, wondering what it would be like. At the same time, he climbed onto the roof. He ran among the zombies, thinking that no one would stop him from delivering the treat. He also felt very calm, and the feelings of the joint regime with Xiao Yu were different from his current state, the regime with Zi. He set out to kill all the zombies on his way to Xiao Yu and said that he would not let anyone make her wait. Gu Xiao Yu was standing on the roof watching what was happening below. She closed her eyes as Cao had said, waiting for him. He ran from one car to another, thinking that gas was a bit of a waste, but the happiness of his employees was more important. And after everything was done, the boy left, throwing a lighted candle over his shoulder. Holding the cake, he shouted, asking the girl to finally open her eyes. The cars started exploding and burning after the fire reached them on the spilled gasoline, but it looked like fireworks, multicolored flashes here and there. Covering one ear because the explosions were loud, the boy yelled that this was her birthday present, a limited edition version of the apocalypse fireworks. She widened her eyes, not believing what she saw and heard from the boy. Z turned her head on her as well, grabbing the zombie from behind by the neck and choking him as he growled and squirmed. Handing the girl a cake with candles for her to blow out, Xiao Meng said with a smile that he would make her a cake for the rest of his days for every birthday she had. Xiao Yu smiled faintly, making a wish when the system informed the boy that she thought the cake was strange, but kept quiet about it. Standing on the roof of one of the buildings in the city of Binhai, the boy thought about the fact that he decided to go to the old part of the city because there could be traces of experiments or something that would help him understand the cause of the apocalypse. A guy named Haiyan asked what happened to the bridge. Zhao remembered that he met him a few days ago, and before the apocalypse he was an employee of his company with his ex-friend. Standing by the water, Chao said that the bridge had collapsed, and that he would not be able to get to the other side even with a rope, and the boy, meanwhile, said that nothing could be done, and they had to go back. In the camp sat its leader, waiting for Haiyang and Xiao Meng to return, because they had gone to check the possibility of crossing to the other side of the city. He told the boss of the camp what and how near the river. He thanked him and said he understood, but Xiao immediately asked if his men had found anything. One of the boys pointed towards the river and said that they had found a boat there. Not believing in such luck, the boy asked if it was not broken. After hearing about the yacht and the fact that the only problem there was the lack of fuel, he began to say that it was necessary to get it as soon as possible. The food supplies would run out in 2-3 days. The camp boss asked with a smile if Cao would like to do this, because he has 2 beauties with him, and the campers will only be a burden to him. Cao asked if he was talking about moving people to the yacht temporarily until he could get fuel and meet a little later. The boss laughed, saying that this is exactly what he meant, and after completing the task, the boy will receive a good reward. Turning, the boy walked away, telling them as he went to get the supplies to the yacht, and he would be back at sunset. The girls waited patiently for him near one of the columns, leaning on them. As he passed by, he drew their attention to him and said that they were going away. Xiao Meng stopped when Haiyang called out to him and said that he would also come with them. He thought to himself that every day people were beating him more and more. At a gas station full of zombies, Gu Xiaoyu used her new skill, large-caliber weapon, which was her second ability after reaching 70% loyalty. Watching her power, Cao couldn't help but smile as it was no less of a caliber than the war god that was her first ability. Haiyang shouted happily, asking the girl what kind of kung fu she used and asking her to teach him that too. Grabbing the boy by the hood of his sweatshirt, Zhao asked why she should teach him there, and then added that the boy should not just stand there, but take gas. While the girls rushed into the attack, using their powers and distracting the attention of all the zombies around them. Once inside the gas station, Xiao said he would leave for now and asked Heian to find some tools to use. Returning to the boy said that Cao is very decent, because for the first time in the entire time of the apocalypse, he has seen someone who stands up against others if he sees injustice. But Xiao Meng explained that he is just a businessman, and that he does work for which people then pay him, and that it has nothing to do with kindness. But Heian stood his ground and said that it was kind, because Xiao was strong, and for that matter in a world of apocalypse and lawlessness, he could take anything by force and not flinch. He said that only Haiyang could live long by following such rules. However, then I thought that he was bluffing yesterday and that, remembering his work in the company, he could say about his keen observation and ability to adapt. Turning his head towards the boy, Xiao said with a slight smile that it was good that Haiyang survived. And he in turn smiled in response and said that he was of the same opinion. As he walked further into the darkness, Xiao Meng heard Haiyang's soft words, as if it was good that he didn't commit suicide. Turning, he asked loudly what he had said, saying that he had not heard. But the boy only replied that they were both handsome. While Haiyang asked for the millionth time if this or that would help, Xiao could barely hold on, answering that they wouldn't need either. He turned to him and shouted for Haiyan to go and check the gas because there was an overturned car down there. The guy started to climb into the car because he decided that this is what should be done first. He left the canister nearby. A zombie crawled out from under the car, attracting Haiyang's attention. Standing at the top, the boy was startled, leaning back and leaning against the railing. They were damaged, so they broke, and the little boy was scared because he was falling backwards. While he was crying out in fear, Xiao Meng grabbed his leg, muttering to himself that Yang was the same restless boy. Hanging upside down, he told Xiao to be careful because there was a zombie under the car. Holding it with one hand and clenching his teeth with strain, he said that now was not a very good time for that, because he had already dealt with one, but it seems that someone bigger had arrived. The girls both raised their heads and looked up at the roof of the gas station. It was a very large zombie that was getting bigger and bigger and had spikes all over its body, especially on its shoulders. Heian stared in fear at the monster standing almost in front of him, his mouth open in surprise and fear. The mutant flew straight at Xiao Yu, using his power. It was from it that his fist was like red-hot iron. Looking back at the battle that had begun, Chao cursed. Grabbing the boy tighter and holding him close, Xiao Meng jumped down with him so that they wouldn't get hit by the fireball that the monster released. As they sat on the floor, Xiao asked if the boy was okay while he tried to rediscover his gift of speech. He asked in horror what they should do next, because there were too many mutant zombies. The boy turned to the fight that was still going on and told Heian to get out of here. He told the boy not to worry, and that he would be fine, but explained that it would only be a distraction if Heian stayed here. The kid told them to get ready, and he was leaving with the fuel. When the little one was no longer around, the three of them attacked the mutant from different sides, each with their own strength and abilities. While Xiao was slashing at the monster's back with his sword, the monster caught the pile of stones that Ji threw at him and also grabbed Xiao Yu's leg. Chao couldn't believe it, because the monster had defended itself from his attack with no visible wounds. Standing and holding her shoulder, Xiao Yu didn't look her best. She was bruised and slightly injured, staring at the monster in confusion. And Xiao thought that it would take a lot of effort to win because this mutant was much stronger than anyone they had met before. Cao thought that he needed to at least cut off the monster's arm to slow it down. On the yacht, one of the boys announced that the fuel was ready and that they had fired flares to warn the people from the camp. The camp boss was pleased. Heian was also happy, saying that it was very good, and that once Xiao Meng had dealt with the mutant zombies, they could quickly set off. The boss opened his mouth, stopped smoking, and turned to the little one. He asked about mutant zombies. Xiao Yu, Xiao Meng, and Yanzi were running as fast as they could on the pier, with that huge monster chasing after them whose eyes were blazing red. The little one alerted Shu, the leader of the camp, with a shout of joy as he saw Xiao Meng coming towards them. They jumped off, as if suspended in the air, while the monster screamed at them. It was missing one arm. The monster grabbed a nearby zombie and squeezed it in his hands, coming up with a plan. Xiao Meng wondered if the monster was merging, because while they were running to the pier, it merged with all the zombies they met on their way, and then just picked up and crushed one of them in his hand. Thinking that it is still possible to return to the yacht, he stopped and looked in the direction where the ship was standing. And then he let out a disappointed breath, watching the yacht move away. They still sailed away without them. Seeing the message that the escort mission was completed, he lowered his head and called the girls, informing them that they had the construction of S. And then he drew the attention of the monster that flew towards him with a scream, and something was burning behind him. The stone spear thrown by Yanzi hit the monster directly in the chest, causing it to cry out in pain. He was thrown back by the force of her blow. Xiao Yu's kick was next, and she kicked him with all her might on the hand that the monster was covering his face with to minimize the severe injuries. And then Xiao Meng swung his sword, making sharp and powerful movements to break through its defenses and finally injure the monster. He cut off another of the mutant's arms, using all his strength. After the boy's attack, he became a zombie. Only a sea of blood remained, and it was also of an unpleasant blue color. And he stood with his sword down in the middle of it all. Talking to himself, he admitted that he was a little tired. Glancing to the side, he saw another crowd of zombies heading straight for them. But looking closely, I saw that it was people from the camp who were running to the pier and shouting how the ship could leave without them. All of them also saw Xiao Meng standing in front of them. The zombies chased the people who begged Cao for help. One of the boys was grabbed by the zombie's shirt, forcing him to shriek just to shout at Cao. But he just stood and watched what was happening without moving towards the people. Xiao Meng only said one word, "No." As he stood on the road, he thought of Sisyphus from the myth, who was punished and had to roll a stone to the top of a mountain, but it always rolled back, and he had to start over. The guy said he didn't want to be Sisyphus. But the next moment, The system was showing dozens of missions to protect nameless clients that he could take on and get rewarded for when he completed them. Looking at the girl running from the zombies, he thought what would happen if he did save them. They will die of hunger, disease, or betrayal. But that girl still screamed and called for help when the zombies still got to her. Unable to bear this cry, Xiao Meng nevertheless rushed forward, killing the monster that had already extended its paws towards the girl with a single movement of his sword. He was surprised that his body acted on its own, even though he considered protecting these people as something that made no sense. And the two girls, meanwhile, continued to fight, and with the help of their strength and fists, scattered the zombies one by one. He remembered his friend smiling and saying that garbage only deserves to rot in a landfill, addressing Xiao Meng himself once upon a time. Now the boy was looking at his palm, thinking that people, having power, begin to neglect others and become blind to other people's problems. Standing there and addressing his former friend, he said that he had almost become the same as himself. The girl, meanwhile, poked her finger somewhere back and, starting to become silent, shouted that there was a monster behind her. It was the same monster that had been stoned and that Xiao thought had died. The boy shouted, attracting the attention of the girls and not taking his eyes off the mutant. Z and Xiao Yu charged again, shoulder to shoulder now, quickly lowering themselves to kick the monster. The mutant could not resist. He fell to the floor because Xiao Meng pulled his hand with a rope. And then the boy jumped high, bringing his sword above him to strike. He got into the mutant's hand, and while the mutant screamed in pain, the boy desperately called Xiao Yu, ordering her to join the battle as well. At the same second, she began to build a projectile from her energy, which was still in the shape of a star. She threw it straight at the monster, causing Xiao Meng to jump back to avoid being hit as well. He was kind. Looking at all this, he told himself that even if the world had changed and that a power greater than human had appeared, he would still want to remain human for the last time. Meanwhile, the survivors began to shout one after the other, rejoicing because the ship was coming back for them. Haiyang waved at them happily as the yacht drew closer and closer. 10 minutes ago, Haiyan told the boss that something was wrong with the ship and brought him to show where exactly. He sat down to get a better look. Pointing a gun at the leader of the camp, the boy said that it was not so easy to deal with this problem. The other guy yelled when he saw Haiyan with a weapon in his hands and the boss in the compartment. He asked if the boy really killed the boss. Returning to the camp, he said that today the boss abandoned people due to the approach of zombies, and tomorrow he will abandon them in the same way. He said with a smile that such bastards could not be trusted. But Qiao Xiaomeng was not like that. After listening to the boy's story, Xiao said that he would never have thought that Shu Hui could fall into the water while Haiyang was smiling. He praised the boy and admitted that he never thought that he could kill a person. Haiyan said that the others were afraid of the leader, but did not want to abandon their comrades, so they changed their minds. When asked if Haiyang was right, Xiao Wei, who was sweating profusely, began to feverishly agree. They all ran one behind the other, with Xiao leading the way and telling them where to go to get away from the zombies. He understood that they were successful. Not only did they reach the old part of the city, but they met several survivors along the way. Some of them were infected, so they immediately ran to the camp for help. Now, standing in front of the building from which the dark smoke was rising, he said that it seemed to be exactly the camp they needed. He looked back at the boy holding the bitten shoulder and wondered if it was true what they said that they help bitten people in this camp. He ran determinedly to the building, thinking that it would only help because all he could do was ease the suffering if they were not helped and the bitten treated. Another mutant appeared next to them. This one had an open chest and several heads and was running right at them. The boy ordered Heian and Yanzi to take the people to that camp, while he was going to stay here with Xiao Yu to deal with the mutant. The guard of the camp said that he could not let anyone in because no applications had been received. He said they could try to break into the camp, but he would shoot. Heian shouted that they did not come with evil intentions and only wanted to find shelter from the zombies. Keeping the uninvited guests at his sights, the boy said that the leader was not there at the moment, and he could not let them in, and asked what if the zombies walked into the camp with these people. Joining his group, Xiao Meng said that he would kill all the zombies that could enter, and only asked to let people inside. The guard told him to kill all the zombies first, and only then he would let them in, but warned again that he would shoot if he tried to break in. After activating the cooperation mode with Yanzi and her weapon master mode, He handed the girl the rope, ordering them to engage in battle. Jumping over the zombie, the girl caught it and immediately activated her skill, which caused the ordinary rope to glow purple in some places. All the zombies were tied to each other with a rope. They called it the chicken coop tactic. Taking out the bear with the plates, Chow shouted for everyone to run or lie on the floor if they didn't want to die. The girl and boy from both sides bypassed the crowd of zombies, each with their own side of the rope, and now ran towards each other. They locked zombies in a ring. Throwing away the bear that was attracting the attention of the zombies, the boy shouted to Xiao Yu that it was her turn. The girl used her beheading technique, swinging her leg. After her punch, the sound of the toy sent other zombies running, making the boy squint at them. Chow looked at the statistics of both girls, realizing that they were exhausted from crossing the river, but they had no choice but to fight. Some more mutants appeared, more similar to Chupacabra, bald with tails and claws. The boy was surprised that that zombie was attacking other zombies because he had never seen anything like it before. 3 people in chemical protection suits were standing in the dust and writing something down, and one of them said that the combat skills were fine. One of the unknowns, asking the girl if she was injured, said that even this was not a problem because they had developed a vaccine against the virus and no one would die again. He said that they can go to the camp and will be provided with food and a place to rest. Xiao waved in greeting and asked if he was the leader. I also did not forget to thank you for the invitation. Hearing the words that he was the one to thank from the stranger, Xiao Meng looked at him in surprise as he removed his mask. It was Guangzhong who was now looking at him and said that they had not seen each other for a long time. In the school toilet, the boys beat one of the smaller students, mocking them. The leader asked how he could not give him money because he only wanted to buy cigarettes. Pinning the bespectacled boy against the urinal, the leader said that his boys did not beat him for money, but because of his bad attitude towards them. The boy shouted that there would be no more. Suddenly, the leader shouted that it was disgusting, looking at his leg where there was a stain on his pants. One of his boys backed away from him. Xiao, holding out his hand, said that enough was enough and it was time for them to let the boy go. The leader of the hooligans shouted that he didn't care and asked why he cursed at him, and then he swung, wishing the boy dead. Suddenly, a guy came out of one of the booths, buttoning his pants and pressing one of the hooligans with the door. He said with a smile that there were mice here, and he kept wondering where the squealing was coming from. Xiao Meng said that everything was a bundle and asked if the blonde could fight. He answered, clearly amused that he would try. The leader, holding his cheek, shouted to his boys not to stand as a pole and beat those two. They armed themselves with mops and with a battle cry ran towards the 2 boys who were protecting the bespectacled man. Xiao Meng and Guangzhong attacked back with obvious glee. A little later, they both stood and watched as all 4 of them were seated at the urinals. They discussed that they are sitting in good, even creative poses. The boy they were protecting was crying and thanking them, speechless with emotion and hysteria. Chow said that everything was fine and he could go. Returning to his classmate, he thanked him for his help because if he had been alone, he probably wouldn't have been able to do it. And he said that it was empty and he just didn't like that it was so loud around. Xiao said that Zhong is strong because the majority would have dispersed long ago. He, in turn, said that he could say the same about Chow. The boy extended his hand and introduced himself, saying that he was Guangzhong. Guan is from manage and Zhong is from important and so on from 2nd year, 2nd grade. Cao also introduced himself, saying that he was Chao Xiao Meng. Meng is from fearless, and also mentioned that he is from 2nd year but from 16th grade. Then they realized that their hands were dirty and began to wash them with awkward smiles so as not to shake each other's hands with dirt after using the toilet. Xiao recalled that this was how they became friends and often competed against each other in their studies. He also mentioned that they often met in the park and played some games together. And when they entered the same university, and when Xiao Meng won the developer competition, it was Zhong who stood by and cheered harder than the others. Once, sitting in a diner and eating food, Xiao said that dog kennels have no prospects, and that his idea, which he implements in his app, will be much more environmentally friendly. Guan then asked why he didn't start a company earlier. Xiao, while continuing to eat, said that his family is not doing so well, so if he opens a company, there will be no money left for his mother's treatment. He decided to change the subject and asked his friend how he was doing and whether he was going to return to his father's company. With his mouth full, Zhang replied that he was not going to because his father was not very good at managing personnel. The guy said in all seriousness that he thought Xiaomeng's app should grow, so it should be invested in. And then he suggested that the two of them would create their own company, and that Cao would create all kinds of products there. And he asked with a smile if he correctly understood that Zhang would ensure the functioning of the company. Xiaomeng laughingly agreed, saying that it was time for them to start working together, when Zhang said that they had to take the company into the top 500. And then, standing outside the company they built together, he asked why. The guard led him away emotionlessly, while the boy tried to understand why Zhang was doing this and asked why they were no longer friends. The boy told Xiaomeng that he was like the sun and illuminated the people around him, allowing them to find strength within themselves through him. In addition, he was always an optimist and behaved as if he could build everything again if it didn't work out. And then he turned and smiled, saying that he had always wondered what exactly he would do when he was left with nothing this time. Once at the camp, Zhang first announced to everyone that they had returned. Adults and children started running to him, one in front of the other, asking if he was not injured and if everything was fine. The girl began to cry, complaining to Uncle Guan Yu that the boy had told her that he would soon kick her out. The boy shouted back that she couldn't even put away her things and that she was the first to ask him to be kicked out. Sitting down next to the children, he took their hands and said with a smile that he would not expel them, because they are the future of the camp and that they should reconcile. Xiaomeng watched this with a stony face, remembering how he had told him that the garbage should be in the landfill. One old woman asked if it was possible to leave an old woman like her in the camp, but Guanzhong found the right words for her too, saying that he would never send anyone away. He informed everyone that a new person had arrived and that food and water had to be prepared. Hearing this, Chao remembered how, when dismissing him, Zhang had chased him away like a dog and told him to go away. Turning around, the boy walked in the other direction, thinking angrily to himself that Zhang was still the hypocrite. The girls looked in his direction when he called them and said that they were getting out of here and immediately. But he stopped, wide-eyed, because the system sent a message that he should stay in the camp and get 1,000 points for it, or he will die if he leaves. While everyone's life continued, he became angry, saying that it was unfair, and at the same time building a theory that something should appear for him in the camp. Haiyang said that they were going to send the wounded man to the medical center and asked if he wanted to go too. Calling Guanzhong unenthusiastically, he asked if he could check to see if everything was okay. He said that he could, because the office is open for visits to everyone, especially since they have quite a close relationship. After some time in the medical laboratory, Xiaomeng observed what was happening to the infected and how they were being treated. The nurse told Dr. Khan that the patient's condition had worsened, and judging by everything, he was entering the 3rd stage. The doctor said that the girl should double the dose of medicine, but to begin with, tranquilizers should be administered so that he does not start raging even more. While the doctor turned away and said something to the nurse, the patient tore the straps that kept him in a lying position and turned to attack Dr. Khan. The doctor didn't even have time to react, and Xiao Meng already took him out of the way of the zombie, and even threw him to the floor and pressed his head with his boot. Returning to the doctor, the boy asked if everything was fine with him. Dr. Khan said that everything was fine, although it was obvious that he was frightened and speechless. The girl glared at the boy, thinking that he had a lightning reaction, because they had just noticed, and he had already reacted. Guanzhong asked the girl if there was any way to fix the situation. It was clear that he was worried about the boy. She said that it is theoretically possible, but it is necessary to wait until an hour remains before the transition to the 3rd stage of transformation. As soon as the drug was administered to the boy, he immediately stopped screaming and wheezing. Sweat streamed down his face. A few more seconds and the boy's complexion evened out. He calmed down and fell asleep. Xiaomeng couldn't believe that the medicine had helped, but he had seen it with his own eyes. He thought that must be why the system told him to stay here. When they went outside, the doctor thanked Cao for saving him because he owed him his life. The boy smiled, saying that it was a small thing, but he still didn't know who this man was. And then Zhong appeared, apologizing for not introducing them to each other. He said that for some time after the apocalypse he wandered here and there, and then he met Dr. Kang Yang and the nurse and later found out that they were virus experts. He recalled looking for people in the neighborhood and directing them to the camp, what they organized, and how people came for food. Xiao Meng asked emotionlessly if the medicine had been delivered, but Zhang said no, because the probability of the medicine working was 50%. He thought that most likely the system wanted him to do something with the drug in the future. Guanzhong called out to Xiao Meng, looking at him and frowning. He sobbed, saying that he was very sorry for the way he had acted in the past. Cao's eyes widened in surprise, questioning what he said. He said that he is sorry for the time he did this to the boy, and that he would like to restore trust between them. But he understands that it is not that easy. Turning around, Xiao walked away and said that he would not forgive him and that Zhong understood that. Running after his former friend, Zhong yelled for him to wait and that he wasn't kidding. But he was stopped by a little girl who asked with tears in her eyes how her mother was doing and when she would be able to visit her in the infirmary. Crouching down across from her, he stroked her head and told her that her mother missed her too, but that we should wait a little longer to visit her until she was even better. And then he told the girl to go play with the toys while she waited for permission to visit her mother. The child happily ran away. Xiao Meng asked what happened to the girl's mother, saying if she was sick, and he chased her away. But Zhong said that this was impossible, because this place only became such because of people. He elaborated on the camp and the volunteers, saying that it wasn't until he started researching zombies and working with these people that he realized how bad he had been with Xiao. He said that he used to reason like his father, that all you need is power and nothing else. Through gritted teeth, Guanzhong said that after the apocalypse, he realized how unnecessary all those things were. Then he cringed, saying that he finally realized that he was still an asshole. He said that he did not demand forgiveness, but only wanted to apologize for what he had done. Cao interrupted his former friend, telling him to speak quickly, why he needed him. He began to make excuses that he had not even thought of such a thing. But Xiao told him to stop breaking the comedy because no one just spills all the secrets about the camp and the drug. Ta Zhong did confess, saying that Dr. Kong used to work on the other side of the city, and there were various research activities there. He said that they had tried to get in there many times, but there were too many zombies and they couldn't make it. With his arms outstretched, he said he needed help to get the materials. Bowing low, Zhong prayed for help. Still bent over, he said that they needed the drug to survive and that he wanted this to be over. Xiao said that it looks too fake. Zhong said he could even kneel down if needed, and that would help. But Cao said, folding his arms over his chest, that there was no need to do that. Zhong continued, saying that together they would be able to overcome any challenge. The boy thought to himself that at least he was right about one thing. Sooner or later the world would end. He also thought about the fact that you will not get anything back and the drug must be found, so that those who survived, who remained, would not have fear. Approaching Zhong, who was still standing with his hand outstretched, Xiao also thought that the system stopped him for a reason, and it was all about the mission. Deciding that he was interested in how he tamed zombies, he said that he agreed to help. Guanzhong rushed to hug him, but Xiao Meng held out his hands, recoiling. He said that he should not approach, and that he would only help to get information, and that's it. He said that he is not going to not put up, and all this is because of the drug. He replied that he understood everything and thanked the boy once again for his help. Xiao Meng told him to pack up as they were leaving the camp. The zombies were running everywhere when a mutant pounced on them and began to tear them to pieces, raising a cloud of smoke around them. Xiao Meng said that those two mutants looked a lot like dogs. Looking at them, I thought that these mutants were the starting point of their journey. These terrifying monsters, one of which flew and ran nearby according to the doctor, had intelligence and could follow certain commands. They were seen to have electroshock chips sewn into their backs, and when they disobeyed or posed an irreparable threat, the chips would activate and kill the mutants. Zhong said that the task was very dangerous and suggested that the girls stay in the camp so that they would not get hurt. But Cao said that it was impossible because the two girls following them were his workers. While they were running on their errands, Xiao Meng said that these girls' fighting skills were far superior to those of the zombies released by Zhong. Yang began to say that it was true, and Xiao Yu, Yanzi, and Xiao Meng were masters of their craft. Xiao said, answering Zhong's question why he took the boy with him, that he is very helpful and can help when needed. They reached the SDS they were going to, and each of them pointed their weapons at the entrance as they got closer and closer. The boys made their way inside and watched the zombies, debating whether the doctor couldn't have given a map of the route when Chung said the document was on the 4th floor and to avoid fighting. Haiyang and Zhong looked at each other through binoculars. The other said he knew how to get to that floor, and Xiaomeng asked where the hell they got the binoculars. Deciding that they can go through an underground tunnel and go up immediately to the 3rd floor in another part of the building, and from there to the 4th. Cao ran with a sword, saying that the zombies in the old city differed even in skin color, not to mention appearance and mutation. Heian said there were more mutant zombies here than where they came from. The boy listened in amazement as Zhong explained that the doctor had once said that the longer the apocalypse goes on, the more mutations there will be. Guan talked about 3 types of mutants. The first is improved zombies, eat only living creatures but increase skills through evolution. In fact, it was Yanzi or Xiao Yu whom the boy introduced during the conversation. The second type is fusion zombies, which improve their powers by fusing with other zombies, and when they are very hungry, they can eat their own kind. Of this kind was Tank the dog or that zombie on the pier. As they walked, Zhong said that the domesticated zombies in the camp were also of the second type because they had merged with the dogs in the process of evolution. He said that the power of such zombies is unstable, and it may take different numbers of people to defeat them. As they continued on, Zhong explained that it didn't matter which zombie they were, because they all had the same weaknesses, UV light and the brain. When they reached the 3rd floor door, he said, drawing his gun, that the explanation was over, for they had already arrived. Opening the door, he drew the attention of some zombies near the entrance. Xiaomeng thought that he would not be able to protect everyone if he had to face them all at the same time, because there were too many monsters here. One of the boys was terrified, thinking that he shouldn't have gone and that when they returned, he would be transferred to a niche group. He thought as he clutched his rifle that if he came back, he would spend more time with Xiao Mei and the others. He hoped that the girl would love him, sweating with terror. Heian, while they were running, because they had attracted the attention of the zombies, said that there were stairs to the 4th floor. Cao urged the boy to run faster. He yelled at Yanzi to get the alarm clock and lure the zombies into the lobby while they made their way to another floor. The girl caught the alarm clock, immediately raising it above her head and drawing the attention of the zombies to follow her. Fleeing in another direction while the zombies ran at Z, Xiao shouted that they would see each other later. After closing the door of the 4th floor, Haiyang leaned against the door trying to hold it. He said that it would not be possible to hold back the crowd for a long time. Zhong told Xiaomeng and Haiyang to go to the documentation room. It was at the end of the corridor. Cao couldn't help but smile, bowing his head slightly and asked, as if in disbelief, if he trusted them. He, trying to hide his uncertainty, said that of course he trusted. Turning around, Xiao called out to the boy and told him that they were leaving. But the boy only shouted, wondering if he was so determined. Cao left the girl behind the door, ordering Xiao Yu to guard the door. She stood next to them, looking like a zombie. While they were walking between the racks and looking for the right documents, Xiaomeng asked the boy how his leg was, and the boy replied that everything was fine. While going through the files, Cao asked Heian what he thought of Guanzhong. He said that he seemed to be a good person because it is not easy to manage such a camp. However, he said that he had changed and became more like Xiaomeng. And then Haiyang turned to the side, startled by a loud sound. It was Cao shouting, telling the boy not to match them, but not wanting to explain why he reacted like that. He said that the boys should forget about it, and that they should speed up their search for something, because they had little time. The little one let out a happy squeal, saying that he had found what they were looking for, a folder of documents that belonged to Kang Yan. Squinting at him, Cao told them to get out of here quickly. And while Xiaomeng was tense and focused, Haiyang happily shouted to Zhong that they had found everything. He smiled, saying that it was very good, and he didn't expect them to get used to it so quickly. And then he asked if they had checked the content of the books and if there could be any mistakes. Handing over one of the books, he said that the numbers the doctor had written on them matched, so Cao thought there could be no mistake. The boys widened their eyes as they heard a sound coming from somewhere below. Fragments of concrete flew, and Heian was thrown back. He shouted, calling out to Xiaomeng. As he balanced on the wreckage with his sword at the ready, he wondered if Yanzi had tried her best below to cause this situation. Maybe she met someone huge and was fighting him now. Jumping down to the lower floor, Xiao Meng landed on his hands and asked what Yanzi had there. He saw an inexplicable mutant that was a hybrid of many zombies, and on top of that was a mutant with a crippled chest. Xiao Meng was frightened, thinking that things were bad and that this creature had to be dealt with as soon as possible, because it looked very scary. When the girl swung the stone, the boss shouted at her to aim for the head. But after a few seconds, the monster exploded, forcing everyone to cover themselves so as not to be blinded. Cao cursed as the monster completed the fusion, pulling the spear out of its chest. What appeared instead of a bunch of zombies had 3 heads, 6 arms, an elongated face, and looked directly at Xiao and Zi. Guanzhong shouted as he commanded the 2 zombies they had tamed to attack this mutant. They immediately attacked. The mutant tore through both zombies without even choking. After activating the joint mode, Tao ordered Yan Zi and Xiao Yu to stop the monster as soon as possible so that it would not merge with anyone else. He said that it was necessary to protect others, because he, unlike them, had already encountered such. As Xiao Yu approached, a hand began to climb out of the mutant's open mouth. The monster swung, attacking Xiao Meng, who began to be thrown against the wall by the force of the impact. Sitting on the floor, the boy held his head and thought that the monster had a lot of strength, and it was a good thing that he managed to get out. Yanzi held onto her forearm, attacking the monster that tried to attack her. The boy thought about how to defeat him and built a strategy, but he had one annoying person, Guanzhong. He was just holding one of his men, throwing his arm over his shoulder, and was looking around. Turning his head, Xiao Meng told them to get out of here, and that he didn't want Heiyang to die here. When Zhong asked how they could run away, Xiao replied that they should leave as soon as possible, because the medicine had to be finished. He didn't even turn back, throwing his sword over his shoulder, but assured that he would definitely not die here. The boy put his fist to his mouth and focused on the mutant, thinking that he didn't want anyone to see him during the fight. Meanwhile, the monster was attacked by Yanzi, who tried to inflict as much damage as possible. He watched the monster react to the girl's attacks and thought that it could be defeated with one powerful blow. The boy understood that Xiao Yu would not want to compete with the monster, and Yanzi could not fight because his arm was injured. But he had an idea. He figured out how to increase the damage radius of Xiao Yu's spikes. The girl activated the God of War and spike throwing skills at Xiao Meng's command. She began to cough up blood, bending over. She continued to fight, and the monster grew angrier at her, attacking even harder. At the same time, Xiao Meng shouted at her to get out of there and not overexert herself. The boy looked at the fact that everything was working out and going according to plan, but he understood that there was still not enough strength. He thought the girl would attack with spikes again, but he thought there should be pauses between activations. Xiao Yu caused the explosion, throwing all the spikes she could, and now she was covered in blood, her own and the monster's on the wreckage table looking down. Chao muttered to himself that Xiao Yu had made too much noise and the floor might have moved. Having decided to play it safe and get out as soon as possible, the boy said, calling both girls, that they were leaving here. But Gu Xiao Yu lay on the floor and did not move, showing no signs of life. The boy ran closer, thinking that she was greatly weakened after the last attack, because she spent all her strength to defeat the mutant. Returning to Yanzi, the boy shouted for her to protect herself and not others, because she herself was injured. But the girl held his hand, looking at the boy in return, and the system announced that she refused to leave her companions. To make sure she listened, Xiao Meng poked her finger and said that this was an order. When Zi complied and walked away, he breathed a sigh of relief. And then he activated a joint mode with Yanzi to finish the battle with the zombie, because he can activate it if the worker is within a kilometer radius. Xiao Yu, who was unconscious, began to fall through the hole in the floor to the lower floors, and Xiao Meng tried to catch her. At the last moment, he grabbed the girl by the wrist, preventing her from falling onto the debris on the floors below. Holding on to the armature sticking out of the floor, he told the girl not to worry. He was holding her, and asked her to wake up. He said that he definitely wouldn't let her go, then climbed back upstairs holding Xiao Yu in his arms and saying that they needed to get out of here as soon as possible. Using Yanzi's power, he ran as fast as he could while the entire floor collapsed behind him. He clenched his teeth with strain, telling the girl in his arms that they were almost out, because he could already see the light in the open door. Xiao Meng woke up with a scream from his dream and sat up on the bed not knowing where he was. His shoulder hurt sharply, so he pressed his palm against it, gritting his teeth. Haiyang cried out, glad that his friend had woken up. Chao looked at him in surprise, asking if he had returned, and if this was Guanzhong's camp. He said it was 2 weeks ago, and that he was running out of the building when Zhong came back to get them. He turned abruptly, asking how Yanzi and Gu Xiaoyu were and if they were all right. At the same time, both girls were outside and in the company of children, not knowing how to react to them while the children were communicating with them. Both blushed. He asked if they were being searched when the boy said they were outside. He thought that then everyone would know that the girls were zombies. Heian told Xiao not to worry because the doctor was only busy with him, and Heian saw no reason to show the girls to the doctor. Calmed down about the girls, Xiao Meng thanked the boy for everything. Left alone with himself, he breathed a sigh of relief, because no one knew about the girls' identities. The boy opened the system, checked the condition of the girls and the quest, received the drug data, and now he could open the fragment of Xiao Yu's memories. He couldn't believe, wide-eyed, that Gu Xiaoyu's loyalty had reached 99%, because before that, it was much less. Holding the fragment, the boy thought about the fact that he probably receives a fragment of memories at the moment when the employee's trust increases. Or, I asked myself, does the system make it clear what it's like when loyalty reaches 100%? The girl looked at him, standing a few steps away, while the boy thought that first, in any case, he had to look at the memory. While the voice was talking about the metaverse at the beginning, he squinted and realized he knew the voice, but he couldn't believe he was hearing it. Cao knew both that voice and that door that was so familiar to him. As he stood in the corridor, he wondered if there could be such a coincidence. He saw himself when he didn't have enough money yet, and they were just starting out. He said that everyone will receive the minimum wage, but it will increase in the future. He opened his mouth, not believing his eyes. It was him, and just when he was making a presentation of his project, talking about it from the stage. The guys in the audience shouted to him that they believed in him and that he would definitely complete this project. Everyone is determined to follow him to the end. He saw himself when he covered his face with his hand from the emotions that squeezed his throat. The boy was visibly pleased to hear such words. He thanked everyone for their support. Xiao Meng realized as he opened his mouth that this was Xiao Yu's memory, and that she was definitely in the company at the time he launched this project. He couldn't remember her among the workers as he looked at everyone working at their places. Xiao asked whether Xiao Yu was on the team at the time, and whether she worked on the project after it started. He watched as a girl with a badge on her back carried stacks of papers. The guy saw how tired she was then, and they really didn't meet, because he was constantly running on project matters. Cao recalled that they then realized that the equipment their partners had given them was not suitable, and the other directors made the decision to close the project. They then went to the directors with Zhong, to whom Xiao told that they just had to be convinced not to close the project and not raise the investment amount, and they would sign a contract with a new supplier and everything would be fine next month. The man with the cigarette asked what Xiao Meng had forgotten in his office. He said that it makes no sense to convince not to close the project because everything has already been decided. But the boy asked to give him a couple of minutes and listen to his idea. Xiao said that they have absorbed 70% of the world's cloud gambling, and if they create a meta-universe now, the next 10 years will be bathed in money. Cao continued to speak, saying that they only needed to settle things with the equipment supplier, and the project would work itself out in the long run. The man sitting at the head of the table folded his hands in front of him and asked if Guanzhong agreed with these words. But he, realizing that he was losing a friend or losing the entire company, said no and that he thought it was right to close the project. Cao was shaking with anger and despair. He asked his friend what he was saying, but he kept talking, saying that he trusted Xiao Meng too much and that he didn't think that he would lead the company to such a state. Xiao ran to his friend, who dropped his head on the table, apologizing for all of Cao's actions. But he stopped when he heard the voice of one of the directors telling Guanzhong that he knew what to do in such a case. Xiao, standing in the middle of Xiao Yu's memory, remembered that everyone had to leave then. The project failed. All the workers were just gathering things around. The other girl shouted that it was Xiao Meng's fault because she submitted the risk report a long time ago. Another screamed that the risk report was empty, but that he spent 80% on equipment that didn't work as it should. That's bad. Now, listening to all this, he rolled his eyes and couldn't believe that such gossip would start circulating. After all, it was not true. Another said that Xiao Meng had been deceiving them all this time and they were working for free. He glanced at Zhang, who was shouting out of breath as he ran that he had failed to convince the directors to keep Xiao Meng's seat. But they could rest easy. The guy convinced everyone that they can work in the same positions as before. Everyone began to cheer, cheering Guanzhong, while Xiao stood with his arms crossed over his chest and watched this performance. One of the boys shouted, "Isn't Zhang more trustworthy than that rascal Xiao Meng?" The only one who did not change her point of view and did not succumb to all this was Gu Xiaoyu. She threw her pass on the floor and turned to walk away. Coming out of the memory, the boy closed his eyes. He thought about whether he was to blame for all this, because he was the one who proposed this project to launch. He remembered himself and wondered now if the small flow of money was really due to the fact that he was constantly reinvesting in the project. Remembering Guanzhong's face back then, the boy now wondered if that was why he had dumped him, calling him trash. Because the project was doomed and he was simply defending himself? Xiao Meng sobbed with his head bowed as Gu Xiaoyu watched him. The system gave him a new mission to promote Xiaoyu. He had to apologize to all the company's employees by going there. Cao stared at the system's message, telling him to go to the company as soon as possible, and in the meantime, he would be in a state of workers' suffering. He held his head, thinking that these feelings, which began to overwhelm him, felt like a complete negativity that affected everything: the brain, the heart. The girl calmly looked at him, while Xiao thought that he should not delay and go to the place as soon as possible, because it would tear him apart from the inside. He looked very bad, but he told Yanzi to stay here and be careful. He told himself that he still had the feeling that something was wrong with this place, but he hoped it was just his paranoia. He breathed a sigh of relief when he and Xiaoyu both reached the company building. The boy grabbed the door handle. Xiao Meng looked at the sign with his company's name on it and thought that it gave him unusual feelings. They walked down the corridors as he asked himself how he was supposed to apologize and complete the mission if there wasn't a soul here. He reflected on the fact that he had found only a few belongings of the employees he knew, but they were all left here, as his memory showed him. Or not. The only way out was to use Zhang's computer to find out the fate of the workers. Xiao Meng clutched his sweatshirt to his chest, looking dejected, as Xiaoyu swung her leg to break down the office door. He said that it was getting harder and harder for him to stay conscious, because there was definitely something here. The boy began hacking Guanzhong's computer, asking himself if he really thought Xiao Meng would stop a few lines of code. Finally, he found all the staff photos and addresses, so he wanted to find a printer to print them out. But it was surprising that so many people quit after he left. And then he was surprised that there was a folder with his parents on Zhang's work computer, and it was also encrypted. He looked at market valuations, risk assessments, and layoff data, but writing, the boy realized that these data differed from what he remembered. And then I saw a problematic supplier and several videos, supplier invoices, tax documents. The boy was surprised that Guan's secretary was the director of the supplier firm, and he had never received any risk reports. He realized that the person who called for the tender and the supplier worked for Zhang. And then he realized that they started firing other workers like him, even the interns, to get a little money, but judging by the reports, it was only a small part. And this whole story was just a bait for him, Xiao Meng. He couldn't believe it, digesting all this in his head, that the documents he and Xiaoyu saw were fake. And did the system bring him here to reveal the truth? He suddenly felt sick, and the boy, falling to his knees, leaned against the wall. He, holding his chest, thought, was something strong outside. He asked for the tablet to be given to him when the last video was decoded because he had to see it. Entering another room, he looked at the monster, which had several gaps. He could not believe that it was unclear what the workers were. Xiao Meng cried out from the sensations and emotions that washed over him, every negative thought of the workers when they were told that the company had failed. He shouted that he was the target of Guangzhong and they suffered with him. Cao shouted, unable to bear the pain, that it was not their fault. He shouted that he was very sorry. Xiaoyu was holding the tablet where the boy was addressing him in the video, saying that they couldn't find him and so they asked Guangzhong for help. The boy was told not to be so reckless, because after his release, no trace of him could be found. They wanted to find the guy and beat him up, but they didn't. The other girl was saying that it was fortunate that Guangzhong had helped clean up after him and that Xiao should be thankful for that. And she saw him when he was trying to get a loan from the bank. He stared at the screen in surprise, hearing what the girl said. He worked very hard and that her aunt, who works in a bank, would be able to help him. Xiao Meng's eyes widened when he heard that they all asked him to promise that he would stand up and work on the mistakes. The guy heard that He Yang joined the video. They all said that they believed that he would come back successful and they would be by his side. He covered his face with his hand, sobbing with emotion. He stroked the girl's hair, saying that if they had not forgiven him, that he had no right to die here until he had obtained that forgiveness. Saying that he wanted to settle scores with Guangzhong, he asked the girl to rest and assured her that he would deal with everything himself. The boy looked at the monster, determined to win, and said that it was time to calm down forever. Cao drew his sword and ran to attack when the monster saw him and targeted him. As he charged, he asked Zhao Ziyang if he had forgotten to take his stomach pills when Xiao Meng left, and also said that the boy always worked as if he considered himself immortal. He told Xu Liguo that he was grateful that she always helped buy good coffee, swinging his sword at the avalanche of zombies that had grown together. As he attacked, he addressed Wu Liqi, saying that they had the worst outing ever, and he told Teng Xiaogan that they often rode the same bus. Recalling their cheerful faces, he said that they all worked side by side and were one step closer to success. They were really only one step away from success. But now he swung his sword with all his might. He began to run from one zombie to another with full speed, wielding a sword. Their badges fell one after the other, and Xiao Meng asked each of them for forgiveness and thanked them. He said that thanks to their forgiveness, he was ready to turn around and get back on his feet. Xiao Yu peered into the doorway and the system notified that the girl was very worried, so she decided to spy. Seeing the girl, Cao smiled and assured her that he was fine and called her to print out the staff list. Now he stood and looked at the graves of all the employees that he had made with his own hands. Each had sticks on which their passes hung. Bowing low, he said he would never forget any of them and ask them to rest in peace. After a few seconds, the system started adding employee passes to the system museum, and he opened his mouth and told himself that this museum had been there until now. He remembered one of the figurines that he had been given before this. It was an important thing for a person who gave it as payment for work, and it was preserved as an exhibit in a museum. Looking up at the bright lights as the passes were slowly added to the museum, the boy said he realized that being a part of his company was important to them. Xiao Yu stood silently next to her. Xiao Meng told the girl that after his dismissal, he often wondered if he was a good boss, and today he found the answer. He said that with the hope and faith of others, he wanted to put an end to everything that had happened to Guangzhong in the past. Earlier, when Xiao had just left the camp, the doctor and Zhong were walking together, and Kang Yang said that thanks to the materials Zhong collected, the vaccine had become a super vaccine. Kang Yang told Guangzhong not to downplay his achievements, because their experiments on test subjects 1 and 2 played a huge role in the development of the vaccine. They both became serious and decided that they should hurry to the laboratory to check the last step in the experiments. All of this was watched from around the corner by He Yang, who had been following Zhong because Xiao Meng had asked him to, saying that he had a feeling something was wrong with Guan. He Yan quietly asked himself where the two of them had gone and what kind of super vaccine it was. The boy decided that it was necessary to find out all this as soon as possible and before they returned. He Yan made his way through the ventilation shaft to the part of the building where the offices were located to get the information he needed. He told himself that he had to hurry before those two returned. The little boy tried to find his way to the office of Dr. Khan. Hearing footsteps, He Yan hid, crouching down and drawing a knife as the two boys walked by, saying that all the doors were closed and there was no need to check, as they wouldn't get anything in the dining room. But there was another girl who recognized the boy, calling him by name in surprise. She asked why he was here. The boy opened his mouth, not believing his eyes. Jia Yue was standing in front of him. When she tried to say something else, he quickly jumped out of his hiding place, covered her mouth with his hand, holding the knife in his other hand. He Yan apologized to her, bringing a knife to stab her because she shouldn't be here. The girl, trying to defend herself, put out her hand, from which blood gushed almost immediately. He crippled her hand with a knife right through. Bleeding and holding her wounded hand, the girl asked him why he was here and said that she could take him where he needed to go if he did not kill her. Hae-young said, with a maddened expression, that she looked like someone who wanted to live, even though he had always had the impression that she was one who was not afraid of death. Clutching her wrist, she said that she could not die now and that she had unfinished business. The boy said with a smile that then he would have to strain her so that she would show him the way. The girl said that he had already dug through everything and had not found anything yet, and that there were only reports in the office and nothing else. Her hand was already bandaged. Hae-young said he wasn't looking for anything specific, just looking for something. Xia said that he was one of the core of the new arrivals, and she did not understand at all how they could have had suspicions about something in their camp, and that they only improved the vaccine through experiments without dark stories. But the boy, remembering the girl who asked about her mother, asked the nurse where Xiao-na was then. The girl lowered her eyes, saying that the body of some volunteers did not tolerate the experiments and the vaccine very well, and they died. One of those who died was the mother of the little girl. She recalled how Dr. Khan supported her and helped with funerals. The girl said that she simply could not tell the child the truth, but she was sure that this did not prove that there was something dark in Dr. Khan's affairs. She screamed, asking what reason she could have for lying in such survival conditions. Looking at the documents, the boy said thoughtfully that it made Dr. Kong look even more suspicious. In any case, that beard has a lot about viruses, bacteria, and all that. In a book that did not belong on the shelf with experiments, Hae-young found a flash drive, which made him smile with satisfaction. It was exactly what he needed. Under the surprised look of the girl, the boy said that he needed a computer, resolutely going to the one standing on the table. After turning on the video that was on the flash drive, the boy thought about why the video of Xiao-na's clinical experiments should be kept in the book, and so secretly. He told Xiao Yue with a smile that the experiments were not so secret unless there was something mysterious, so he told them to look further. But the video began the third combat test for a zombie tied by the leg. Xia Yue couldn't believe what she saw on the screen, screaming and asking what it was. Hae-young asked the girl why Xiao-na turned into a zombie then, if she was buried, as she was sure. For fidelity, he poked his finger at the screen. And while the nurse was in the denial stage, he continued, asking her that if the doctor was saving people, then why would he record this test? He asked if she would still ask why he didn't believe them. Xiao Yue looked through the many files on the computer, asking herself why this was happening and why. The girl sobbed as she remembered everything that had happened while they were researching the virus. Many people had said they were willing to sacrifice the lives she had lost while they were developing a vaccine. She remembered how the doctor had said that it was already difficult for her, but he would take care of the body himself. He promised to find the best place for the grave. In anger and pain, Seo Ayu screamed, asking how these assholes could lie to her all this time. The girl breathed a sigh of relief as she said the two were unresponsive to her reports of trouble and never allowed to see the subjects. When she started to click something on the computer, the boy fearfully asked her what she was doing because they were leaving traces, and that was not part of his plans. Xiao Yue tied her hair in a ponytail so that it wouldn't get in the way, and said that these assholes were planning to use the research to create a biochemical weapon by sacrificing many people. So she was going to destroy it all. The guy rolled his eyes, asking if she wanted to keep the research on the anti-vaccine because it is still in development. She said she had a copy, she kept it in her head. Hae-young said with a smile that she was no longer his hostage then. Raising a finger, Xiao Yue asked with a smile in return if she understood correctly that she was now his accomplice. The girl said that they had little time and that she would destroy everything on the computer and flash drive, and Hae-young should burn the documents. The boy readily went to do his part of the job. But the boy turned to the door in fear because someone was trying to open it from the other side, and when it didn't work, he asked if there was anyone inside. When Xiao Yue was in university, she complained one morning that they were forced to take an oath and did not understand the necessity of it. But her friend said that he also did not understand this, but these were magic words, and they not only stuck in his head, but also gave them strength. The girl asked one of the campers if Guanzhong had planned this in advance. Heian shouted that too many zombies had gathered near the base due to the explosion, and that they couldn't get out. Yanzi was watching him, holding onto her injured arm. People asked her what to do, putting their hands on their hearts and saying that they would do whatever she said. After thinking, the girl shouted so that everyone could hear that it was necessary to go to test sites 1 and 2, because there they would have a chance to survive with increased protection. She told everyone to stay there for other instructions. A little later, everyone gathered at the warehouse of the second training ground, and Heian asked if it was the girl who was closing the group. Z was standing next to her with a serious look. A mutant appeared in front of them who was missing a part of his side. His hand was larger than the other, and he had a wolf's face. The girl looked at the zombie and remembered a boy named Xiao Shu, who was very similar to him. Even the headband was on his hair. As he ran away, Heiyang noticed that Yan Zi had stopped and was staring intently at the mutant that was jumping higher. The girl began to pick up speed, heading for the zombies, but the boy ran next to her and shouted for her not to act recklessly. Everyone fled, realizing that if the zombie reached their company, then everyone would die. Looking back, the girl thought that she should come up with a plan to stop him. She saw how someone had already run inside. The entrance was nearby. It was only necessary to hold off the zombies for only about 3 seconds until everyone ran inside. Realizing that only she can create the vaccine again, the girl decided to sacrifice one boy to distract the zombies. Shouting for everyone to keep running, she pushed him. She ran straight at the zombies, deciding to sacrifice herself and gaining speed. Seeing this, Heiyang screamed, calling out to the girl and getting scared for her. She ran, remembering the names of all those who had high hopes for her. This gave Xiao Yue more strength as she ran. She imagined that they were all running beside her, and if they were in her place, they would definitely do the same as she did. Remembering her Hippocratic oath, which she gave at the university, and now she smiled. She was doing it all for the sake of humanity. The guy stood and watched everything, saying that people on their deathbeds show great self-sacrifice. He even clapped his hands. He returned with a smile, asking his friend if he agreed with this statement. Xiao Meng entered the room, wringing his hands and saying that it was indeed true, but he highlighted the word friend without sharing his friendly feelings towards Zhong. They stood facing each other, looking into each other's eyes and keeping a certain time of silence. Everyone was thinking about their own, getting ready for the upcoming fight. Xiao Meng began to run, his face stony as he braced himself for his former friend's attack. He was determined to end everything. Guanzhong drew his gun, holding Xiao at gunpoint. He looked very determined to win, even if it meant killing his once best friend. Cao effortlessly dodged the bullets that flew at him one after another. Guanzhong clenched his teeth in anger and hatred as he continued to fire, and couldn't believe that he still hadn't been able to hit. As soon as Xiao ran up to his former friend, he knocked out the gun first, so that no bullet would hit him, striking and applying force. And after that, he slapped Zhong on the face with his other hand with all his might. He recoiled, blood gushed from his leg. Xiao Meng countered the blow by striking the boy once more, and knocking almost all of his spirit out of him. Grabbing him by the chest, Cao asked the friend why he did that. He said, turning his head to the side and not wanting to meet the boy's eyes, that for most things, reasons don't matter at all. A stone-faced Xiao asked if this was an excuse for him to demean the lives and dignity of other people now to achieve his own goals. Turning to face his former friend, the boy laughed loudly, saying that he did not care about others. He looked as if he had escaped from an insane asylum. Throwing Zhong back a few steps to the floor, the boy took hold of the hilt of his sword and said that he hoped he would be a better person in his next life than he had been in this one. He waved decisively, looking at Guan without blinking, and said goodbye to him. At the same time, Gu Xiaoyu was fighting another mutant. He looked like a huge beast, a hybrid of bear, man, and tiger, having claws and fist fighting with the girl. The monster activated one of its skills, and its fist turned into solid fire. He stared unblinkingly at Xiao Yu, who was in front of him. After the explosion caused by the monster, the girl jumped up to get it ready for battle. She drew her hand back, clenched it into a fist, gathering all the strength of her abilities, and was about to hit the monster with her attack. And then she hit him in the stomach, making the mutant scream in pain and bend in half from the force of the blow. The bullets hit him in the back, and the sound of the impact rang out all around. She landed on the roof of one of the buildings, now watching the monster. He was kneeling on the ground, bent over but hardly moving. It was clear that he was retreating from the attack. The mutant squinted, letting out a loud roar of pain and anger. His eyes glowed with a green light, and his sharp teeth could be seen through his roar. Jumping off the roof, the girl ran in the direction of the monster, gaining speed. She gathered her strength into a fist again, bending both hands into fists. She kept her eyes on the monster. At the same time in the building, Guanzhong caught Xiao Meng's sword blade with his hand and asked if he really thought that he couldn't defeat him before, but could now. But Cao kept looking at his former friend and told him to watch carefully how he would do this time. Cao sat on his haunches, watching as Zhong dashed away, leaving the boy to wonder what had just happened. He rolled his eyes, looking at the syringe lying on the floor where Guan was sitting a few seconds ago. He thought about what was in that syringe. Guanzhong said that he understood everything correctly, and that there was the final stage of his research activity. He smiled smugly. Before transforming into a huge lion bear man, Zhong told Xiao that if he wanted to survive in this world, he had to become a predator himself. After the transformation, he got extra eyes on his forehead, claws, and huge teeth. Stretching in front of the fire, Xiao Meng told Heian about his delivery company, that the two girls were his employees, and that they were doing different things and getting paid for it. Cao said that he had one more matter that he would like to finish, and asked the boy if he wanted to help him. He was very surprised by such a proposal, even stopped eating, but later agreed, because he considered Xiao Meng his brother. And brothers in trouble are not abandoned. Xiao was now fighting Zhong. He hit him in the stomach and then hit him in the face with the other hand, knocking the boy several meters away. Looking at his former friend now, Guanzhong said that he was always emotional. And then he added that if he had killed him immediately, everything would have been different. Wiping the blood from his face after the blow, Cao rose to his feet and said that it would be very merciful to kill Zhong with one blow for all that he had done to so many people. Guan said that Xiao then missed his last chance to kill him. He looked at his opponent without blinking, smiling. But Xiao Meng was sure that this was not the case, so he told the boy. He watched him just as intently, waiting for an opportunity to attack. Guanzhong charged, swinging his clawed hand and gaining speed. He turned into a creature only half, retaining his facial features, but behind him was a tail. Taking the iron in his hands, Xiao Meng intercepted it more firmly, also running in the direction of the boy and preparing to defeat this human mutant. On top sat Heian with a rifle, looking through the scope and gritting his teeth, telling himself that he never thought he would witness such a thing. He really thought Zhong was crazy, especially since he mutated. He shifted the scope he was watching through to Xiao Meng. The boy saw that Guan had cornered Chao's brother into a defensive stance. He just held the iron in front of him, defending himself, and then turned his sights on Zhong, who with a crazy smile began to attack. The little one thought that the rifle would not kill him, but it would buy a little time for Xiao. The boy clenched his teeth, looking into the scope and waiting for the right moment, because he only had one shot. Sweat streamed down his face from the tension. Guanzhong, still smiling, brought his hand in for another attack. He told Xiao Meng to prepare to meet his end because it was coming right now. He pinned Xiao to the floor, pressing his head into the concrete. He clenched his teeth in pain, not even trying to fight back as Zhong pushed harder. When the boy decided that he was going to shoot now, he saw in the scope that Zhong had turned to him, looking through the distance directly into the boy's eyes. Heian swallowed loudly, his eyes widening in surprise and fear. He understood that he had a good view of his rifle and knew that he was going to shoot. But nevertheless, gathering his will into a fist, the little one shot when he found the most successful moment for it, and understood that it was impossible to pull any more. Guanzhong let go of Cao, leaning back after the bullet hit him. Heian realized that he had hit and dropped his rifle and ran to Xiao Meng to help him and pull him out, while Zhong moved away from such an attack. Cao bent over, standing cross-legged and trying to regain his composure. He looked bad, holding on with all the strength he had. Something hit the kid in the chest, and he stared in front of him, realizing what it was. More precisely, who? He stopped dead in his tracks. Standing in front of Heian was Guanzhong, who was smiling slyly. He looked at the little one from under his forehead and asked if he was looking for him, looking around. Squinting, he said, guessing that Heian understood that the bullet would not kill him, but he could not think that the bullet would not have any effect. The boy was bleeding from a wound in his chest as he shouted that they were going to hell together and pulled a grenade from behind. He has already torn the check. But the next moment he opened his eyes. He no longer had the hand holding the grenade. It flew up. Covered in blood, Zhang threw the severed arm away. After flying a little further, the grenade, clutched in the severed hand, exploded, attracting everyone's attention but not affecting the two. Hearing the sound of the explosion, Xiao Meng shouted, calling out to Heiyang. He was scared for the little one, but he couldn't get up because he could barely stay on his feet. Zhang looked down at the little one on his knees and said that attacking from behind was not a good idea. He rested his hand on his side, smiling contentedly. The boy was bleeding from his mouth, splattering on the floor, but he was smiling. He said that if he was a bad villain, he should take a couple of lessons from Guan. Zhang lifted his chin as he looked down and said that he would teach the boy something in that case, and that it was called making the most of everything. Zhang's tail, which was tipped with a toothed creature that looked like a fly trap, dug into Heiyang's chest, causing Heiyang to cry out in pain. Zhang asked himself as the boy screamed if he could control the zombie he turned with his own blood. Yan Zi and Gu Xiaoyu appeared behind him, holding their weapons at the ready and moving ever closer to attack. When Zi swung the armature, Zhang effortlessly caught her, turning to face the girls. He brought the fist of his other hand to attack as the girl gritted her teeth from the strain and continued to thrust. Yazizi stared in surprise at her injured arm, which Zhang had just hit, knocking the bone out of joint and breaking the arm at an unusual angle. Flying back, Yanzi screamed in terrible pain, and Xiao Yu appeared behind her, with whom they both flew down and raised a cloud of smoke after hitting the ground. Xiao Meng crawled over to Heiyang, who was lying on his back and barely moving. He was shaking from exertion, but he asked the boy how he was. Scared of the boy's possible death, Xiao said he would find a way to save him and told the system that there was a roulette wheel, and he was willing to play it, and asked it to run. Bleeding, the boy said that after his release, Xiao learned the truth about Zhang's motive. But he did not have the courage to tell the directors because he was afraid of losing his job, and that this was the reason he didn't look for Chao. The boy apologized. Xiao Meng heard that when they met, the boy didn't have the courage to tell about it, and that Chao would begin to despise him for being weak-minded. And Guang listened as the boy said that he planned to kill him as soon as he saw him to avenge Xiao Meng, and that he felt ashamed that he had been on Xiao Meng's side in the past. Xiao knelt down, listening silently to the little one who coughed, but continued. He said he changed his mind when he said he had a new company, because he missed the days when they worked together. Cao leaned over him as the little man breathed his last, holding his hand and leaning his forehead against it. He was broken and sobbing. The boy stared at Haiyan's lifeless body, not believing that he was dead. He talked it under his breath, so that it would finally get to him. But after a few seconds, the guy got up. He looked like the rest of the zombies. His skin changed color and became gray. Guanzhong saw this and turned his attention to the little one, ordering him to kill Xiao Meng. He still wanted to see if the zombie would obey him. Xiao Ming, turning his head towards his former friend, shouted, cursing him. With red eyes and a stump instead of an arm, Haiyan roared and charged, developing tremendous speed. Heiyang began to strike with one hand, attacking and forcing the boy to go on the defensive. He quickly wielded one hand, which had already grown claws. Guanzhong was visibly amused and asked Xiao Meng what happened to him, and if he couldn't pull himself together. As he clenched his teeth viciously as he looked at Zhong, he said that this was exactly the expression he wanted to see and told Xiao to entertain him a little more. Heiyang lunged at Xiao. He growled, trying to get to him and tear him to pieces with his teeth. His eyes were red and there was nothing human in them. But then Xiao Yu appeared, and with a sharp movement, she slapped the zombie Heian in the face with her long blade. She pulled him away from Xiao, bringing her hand in to strike. Zhong rolled his eyes in displeasure because the girl had ruined all his plans. He said that she was blindfolded, with her hands folded on her chest. After Keiguan whistled, a huge monster appeared with several eyes and resembled a hybrid of a bear, a lion, and a human. He growled at his master's call. The mutant received an order to kill the girl and immediately ran to do it, closing the distance between them with one jump. Xiao Yu nailed Heian to the stone pit with a piece of rebar so he couldn't hurt her. Applying force, she drove the irons into the stones. When the mutant swung at the girl from behind, the blade of the sword sank into his paw. It was Xiao Meng who gathered all his strength to protect the girl and prevent her from being harmed. But the next moment, the monster struck him with another clawed paw, knocking him away. The boy was flying, having nothing to hold on to reduce the impact of the fall. He crashed into the wall, barely breathing, while a thin trickle of blood began to flow from his mouth. Xiao sat trying to regain consciousness, but he couldn't even move. Next to him, Xiao Yu crashed into the wall, which also left a dent in the wall and was also trying to recover because she was very hurt. Zhong happily told Xiao to look at his renewed employee and to watch his worker be killed. He valued his people so much. He asked if he regretted giving free rein to his emotions and not killing him sooner. Xiao looked away in confusion and fear, hearing that Guan had injected himself with a super vaccine before they met, and that he would definitely not win. Yanzi lay motionless on the stones, one hand lying idly by her side and the other on her stomach. And then he looked at Heiyang, who was sitting on the floor and stretched out his arms, only wanting to follow Guan's order. Kang called out to Xiao Yu, trying to turn his head towards her. They both looked very bad, barely moving due to the total pain in their bodies. He told her to take Yanzi away from here. When the system announced that Xiao Yu had rejected the request, he bowed his head and told her not to sacrifice herself for him and run away with Z. When she again refused his request, Xiao asked the girl if she wanted to start a family. Because if she leaves him here and continues to live, she will be able to fulfill her dream. She looked at the boy, saying a word for the first time in a while. She told him not to give up. She extended her hand to the boy, and immediately there was a bright flash. The boy looked at his house, not understanding how he ended up here. He squinted in surprise when he saw Xiao Yu, who was still human. She shouted happily, clapping her hands, because she finally found Chao. But she immediately thought about what to say to him, because he might not even remember an intern like her. The boy watched as she rehearsed, trying to find the right words. She said that she believed in him, asked him not to give up and to try again. The girl with the cute expression on her face and huge eyes said that she had heard that he had been having problems lately and added that that was why they had come to see him and cheer him up. She told him, putting her hand to her chest, that every time she ran away from home, she wondered if she had done the right thing. But he gave her the understanding that she had to go to her goal and that nothing could stop her. He lashed out at the girl, who looked at him adoringly, and said that she believed that everything would work out for him, and he would be able to start pursuing what he likes again. She turned around, saying that's the way to talk to a real person, not to yourself. Xiao Meng, who had been watching her in her memory, also turned away. The girl ran to the man who was facing the building and asked him how she could get into apartment 33. Xiao stood with his back and minded. When the man returned at her call, he growled. It was a zombie with hungry eyes that saw its next victim. Beaten, with bags under his eyes, the boy said that now he understood why she appeared near his house. She stood across from him, who was still sitting in the same position and trying not to move. The boy said that she always believed in him, and she confirmed that that was why she was there. Extending her hand to him, the girl smiled and told him to cheer up. She looked much better than before, and the system announced that she was now an elite employee and had received a promotion. They stood there holding hands while the system said that the banned from beginning to end skill had been unlocked and that her attack would be increased when Xiao Meng was on the field, and she also received the skill Immortality. The monster attacked them, hitting the ground with his fist at the place where the boy and girl had been standing recently. Xiao Yu smiled, placing her hand over her heart and looking at her boss. She was showing him to cheer up and keep fighting. Wasting no time, Guanzhong decided to attack himself. He jumped up, aiming at Xiao Meng, and brought his fist up to strike. He became enraged, gritting his teeth, and swung his hand, using all his mutant strength to finally kill the damn boy. But none of this had any effect, and he widened his eyes as he watched as Xiao Meng took Yanzi in his arms and carried her away from the battlefield. He couldn't believe the speed the boy had, because he was standing right here a second back. Cao, while he was carrying the girl, thought about something that had not happened before when working together with Xiao Yu. This was the first time, and he definitely felt it was her. Meanwhile, the girl herself was now fighting the monster that Guan had unleashed. She was collected and serious, dodging all attacks and thinking of a plan of action. The girl smiled as she looked at the mutant and said that he was too slow. Zhang couldn't understand what had happened, as they both almost breathed their last and were now so fast and full of strength that was impossible for normal people. He was trembling, even though he only noticed it. Meanwhile, Xiao Meng had planted Yan Zi near one of the pillars and started feeding her to raise her strength level, as it was almost at 0. Realizing that he was afraid of Xiao Meng, the boy screamed in anger, causing Khan, who was the huge monster that he was, to kill Xiao. He couldn't believe that his former friend was stronger than him. The monster turned the other way, heading for Cao, and Xiao Yu chased after it to stop it and prevent it from happening. Knowing what was happening, he told Yan Zi to sit here and not move, and he would return to her soon. He asked, looking at the girl, to leave everything to him and Xiao Yu. She just appeared in the path of the monster, ready to protect Xiao and Zi, so that the monster would get to them. She clenched her hands into fists, ready to attack. He, looking at the girl following the mutant, to activate immortality, god of war, and heavy swing skills. She obeyed. Acting on everything he said, Xiao Yu immediately ran to attack the monster. The girl clenched her hands into fists. Xiao Yu didn't waste stamina and skill. This was the result of activating the level 1 immortality. She was only gaining speed. Guanzhong spread his legs and spread his arms out to his sides, looking fearfully at how fast she was running towards him. As Guan ran away, not believing how they had become so strong so quickly, he was overtaken by Xiao Meng, who called out to him from the side, looking at him intently. After asking if he was scared, the next moment Xiao cut off Zhong's hand with one swipe and threw him away. He screamed in pain and also got upset. Cao watched from under his forehead, holding his sword in both hands. He was displeased that Zhong had blocked his punch with his hand and that he was now left with only a limb. But it was for the best. He owed Heian a hand. Guanzhong turned around and began to run away, only to think of a plan and attack. Xiao Yu appeared in front of the boy, who was called to this by Cao. She developed tremendous speed, now breaking and clenching her arms to attack. She swung her leg, using one of her techniques and knocking Zhong several meters away with this attack. After flying several meters and hitting the floor several times, it finally stopped and bent over. Zhong was kneeling in his own blood and his eyes widened. As Guan screamed in disbelief that Cao had defeated both him and Khan, he swung his sword and said it was the end. Clinging his teeth into the head of another zombie, the zombie with a maddened expression began to eat it, saying that Cao was the only one he would never lose to in his life. The boy clenched his teeth, understanding one thing: he must win, no matter what it costs him. Screaming Xiao Meng's name in hatred, Zhong began to transform into another mutant, something crawling out of his back as he curled up on the floor. Trying to dodge the attacks of those tentacles, he thought that it had only been a few seconds and Zhong had already changed so noticeably. He was visibly nervous. Guan shouted, transforming further but still getting back to his feet. He opened his mouth with huge teeth and screamed that Xiao would die right here. He looked incredibly scary as he began to shout even louder that there was no way he would lose to Xiao. Cao and Xiao Yu dodged the attacks of those tentacles that Zhong released one after another. The girl, without taking her eyes off the mutant, turned for the boss, saying that she thought they would win. Gritting his teeth, he said that Guan was too good at taking every opportunity. Therefore, they must kill him with one blow, otherwise they will not succeed. As Zhong began to attack, releasing all of his tentacles, Yan Zi appeared behind him, angrily slapping him from the back. And then the girl jumped back to avoid another fracture as Guan yelled that Xiao Meng would not be able to win even if he used all of his workers. Zhong was even more enraged and screamed that only the one at the top of the food chain could rule the world. Exploring zombies and evolving is the secret to success and survival. Cao turned to him, calmly telling him that he was wrong. He said that it is impossible to achieve anything by fighting alone. You can achieve something only with mutual help. Guan was screaming. He was shaking with anger and shouted that it was all a lie. The boy appeared behind Zhong and calmly said that he understood that this was his opinion and that this point of view helped him to fall into his trap. He turned around, gritting his teeth and saying that he had been daydreaming. He was already about to attack. Yan Zi caught one part of the tentacles, wrapping her arms around them and holding them together. The others were caught and held tightly by Gu Xiao Yu, who put a lot of effort into holding them. Cao said, looking up at Zhong, that if he had even one partner, he wouldn't be able to fall into the trap. Suddenly his eyes burst with blood, and he himself screamed from hellish pain. He held his face and shouted what it was and who exactly shot. He Yang was standing there holding the gun he had fired at Zhong a second ago. He had a hole in his chest from that flytrap on Guan's tail, but he looked like himself. Without an eye that was still bleeding, he turned around and shouted viciously, calling out to Xiao Meng. And then Xiao attacked, leaping across Zhong's body with his legs in a split second and landing on his face. Having chopped off his other hand, he said he was devastated by more than the incident itself. Remembering him in the past, the boy said that he always wondered why a rich boy like him was friends with him. Guan said he will miss the love of life and the drive and strength that Xiao always had. And he said goodbye to his former friend. Xiao Meng jumped away as Guanzhong exploded, burning alive in the flames. When it was over, Xiao and Xiao Yu opened the door behind which the campers were hiding and told everyone to get out. They were both smiling. He told others what really happened. Some cried for their comrades. Some rejoiced that everything was over with Guan. One of the survivors handed the boy a flash drive that Haiyan had previously given him. All the doctors' and nurses' tests were on it. As soon as he realized what was there, he found Xiao Yue, who was now a zombie but had become his fourth employee. He brought her clothes, in which the girl now stood and looked back at him. Folding his hands, he said that he had heard from the survivors what she had done to get them to the shelter. He said she was really incredible. And when the day comes that she carries her consciousness like Xiao Yu, she will be able to continue her experiments. Xiao Yu appeared behind him and embarrassedly said that the clothes were a little wrinkled. Xiao Meng called Yanzi, to whom he smiled and thanked for her work. He hugged the girl, apologizing that she always gets through him, but he promised to become stronger in the future and to do his best for it. While the girl was blushing, the system sent a notification that Yanzi was very pale, and although she thought it was an exaggeration, she was very happy. Heian was next. He stood a few steps away and looked at the boss. He didn't look like himself at all. Xiao said that he feels guilty, because if it were not for him, this would not have happened to the child. With sadness in his eyes, he said that he especially felt guilty when he saw that even in a zombie state, he wanted to be on his side. As the guy just stared blankly at his boss, the system sent a message. It turns out that the kid says he doesn't think it was Xiao's fault and asks him not to blame himself. He hugged the boy, sincerely thanking him for such words. She and Xiao Yu stood facing each other when he asked if she had regained consciousness, and she said yes with a smile. He began to ask her questions about whether her body was hurting, whether she was taking pills or eating well to recover her strength after a hard battle. And then, raising his hands and feeling embarrassed, he began to apologize and said that he was not used to talking to her like that. He bowed his head, saying that it was a feud between him and Guan, and she had given much more than Xiao himself. He said he was incompetent as a boss. He felt how the girl easily and a little timidly took his hand. Xiao Yu looked at him with big bright eyes, smiling and offering him to build a completely new company. With tears in his eyes, the boy looked at Yanzi, Xiao Yue, and Heiyang standing nearby. The boy was deeply moved by the fact that each of them wanted to stay with him, but he covered his face with his hand, saying that the company had just started and there would be no salary, and that they should share the risks. The only thing he promised for sure was that they would not die of hunger. Looking at the notification that he had received 1,000 points with a smile, he said that in this case it is necessary to take care of food for everyone. They were in a mall where they were greeted by another mutant with a dozen eyes on his face and teeth and tentacles sticking out of his stomach. Hiding on the shelves, the little boy covered his mouth with his hand so as not to make any sound, so as not to attract the attention of all those zombies. The older boy said that the black exit was right in front of them and that they just needed to sneak in there without being seen so that all those monsters wouldn't run at them. They walked quietly, but the same monster appeared from above, rushing at the grown man. The man, who was the boy's father, shouted at him, telling him to run. Xiaoqian shouted as he watched the Pochara attack his father, that he wasn't going anywhere. While his father was fighting, the boy said, taking out a knife, that he had already lost his mother and would not lose his father either. The little boy sobbed and screamed, asking his father to save him. Seeing that a zombie was behind his son, the man shouted that a monster was behind him. But the zombie was blown away with one shot, splattering blood everywhere and preventing it from devouring the little one. There was a company in front of them, and the guy who was its head asked if they needed help. Haiyan was shooting zombies running around at that time. Xiaomeng said with a smile that the post-apocalyptic delivery company is at their service.